program base, there isn't a agenda packet for council. There's just the agenda.
Thank you, Susan. This is Katie. I was just looking for it.
Yeah. Now, if you're online, you can click on the things on the agenda and bring up the supporting documents, but there's not an entire packet.
Simple ceremony in their living room. Most of the people I know who have been around the Clintons for a long time. So, Mike, are we ready to go? We got a minute. The two of them are in love. Walter Lippman. Mike, you're muted. Okay. That, I think, is the essence of Bill and Hillary Clinton. They had
there's some background noise. So if someone has a TV on, please mute.
Okay, this is 7:30, and I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Common Council for July 21st, 2022 order. And the first item on the agenda is the roll call. Please mute your cell phone or whatever you have. We got a lot of background noise, and that would be very much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, Mike or Laurie, the first item is the roll call. You are muted.
I'll handle the roll. Olson?
Here.
Burke?
Present.
Nelson?
Here.
Kuhn? Emily Kuhn is on her way into the room here. Bussard?
Here.
Kuhn?
Here.
West?
Present.
Ramsey?
Here.
Sullivan?
Here.
All present and accounted for in the Zoom box.
Okay, great job, Mike. Okay, the next item is the public comments. They're limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And Mike Davis is going to keep track of the time, and he's going to let you know 30 seconds before your time is about to expire. And before that begins, I'm going to let you know that many of the elders, as well as I got lots of emails and telephone calls related to the school resource officers, either for or against. And I would like to say that I have a letter with 45 signatures, and that is in support of the school resource program. And you would be surprised. The most common name on this list is like our chief's last name, Helen Brand. So very popular name. So anyway, so now we're going to start with Tom Vanderwest, the first one to contact me. So the Tom Vanderwest is, we got 3 minutes, and Mike will keep track of the time and let him know when there are 30 seconds left. Tom, you're on.
Thank you, City Council, for this opportunity to share my thoughts about the School Resource Officer Program and why it's so important to maintain it. I am Tom Vandervest, the retired principal of Middleton High School as of 2006. During my 9 years as principal, I worked closely with a number of SROs. These officers chose to serve the high school, to work with students, staff, and administration. These officers were a key part of our educational environment with an emphasis on safety and relationship building. Each year, we would update our safety plan and practice activities such as fire drills, tornado drills, lockdown procedures, and evacuations. The SRO was responsible for coordinating with emergency responders and administrators, as well as helping maintain a calm and orderly drill for the 1,500 to 1,900 students as the high school grew. Another safety function was responding to information about drugs on campus, either in the parking lot or in the building. Students would seek out the SRO and share information because of the relationships they had with the officer. The SRO worked as part of our administrative team and our pupil services team. The SRO would be involved in cases of physical abuse or sexual abuse reported by students. The SRO is part of our team effort to serve our students by encouraging truant students to attend classes and follow up with encouragement when students responded positively. I valued the input of the SRO with knowledge of the law and the ability to identify community resources available to work with students coming back from truancy court. As a uniformed police officer, the SRO had a unique role in our high school. The officer showed that police could be trusted, were available to share teen concerns, and would follow through and treat young people as adults. The SRO provides a uniquely valuable resource to the entire school community, students, staff, and administrators by developing these relationships and providing a presence that enhances safety.
30
I ask
seconds.
that you reconsider and vote in favor of the SRO program. Thank you for considering my request.
Thank you, Tom. Wow, boy, so punctual. So, Mike,
Well done. Well done on the timing.
Great
All right.
comments. I see
next-
Rebecca there. Rebecca, do you want to be the next? I know you did approach me.
Sure. Is that okay? Is that the right order? I don't want to.
So, Mike,
Yes,
the next is
Rebecca's-
she's the newly minted chair of the Public Safety Committee. So, Rebecca Prochaska. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'll keep it as short as possible. Just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca. I grew up in Middleton. I have been back in Middleton for the last 11 years. And I was surprised to hear the vote on July 2nd in Common Council regarding the SRO program. Having been in Middleton High School, actually with Mr. Vandervest, who be to me as my principal. And now Chief Troy was my SRO when he first joined the city back in the early 2000s. And I can't underestimate what a positive experience it was to have an officer interacting with both students and staff and being a true resource and confidant for students in hard situations. Had it not been for this early and positive experience, I may not have readily realized that our police officers are not just badged officers enforcing the laws, but rather real people that are devoted to keeping our community and specifically our schools safe. Realizing this program has been in place in Middleton for the last 30 plus years, I've not read or heard of any true removing them from our schools. In fact, as the chair of the Public Safety Committee in our meeting last week, the overwhelming response was program. So it seems to me we may be pulling other communities' issues into Middleton, which I wholeheartedly do not support. And I'm disappointed to see this even discussed. But I know 5 years ago, the school board requested that officers come in uniform rather than street clothes to help curb violence in the schools. So today, I believe going back to street clothes as they were during my time at MHS makes an officer more approachable and is the only really on the table. We're fortunate to have an outstanding, diverse, and dedicated police department in our city. And today, more than ever, it's a critical time to keep the outstanding work building bridges in our community, especially with our next generation. Just wanted to share my experience firsthand and passion for what a great community Middleton is, what a great police department we have, and the bridge they build to our students in our school district.
Thank you, Rebecca. Who's next, Mike?
Lauren Dollar.
Lauren, you're up. 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lauren Dollar. I live at 6736 Ramsey Road. I graduated from Middleton Schools in 2019. First of all, I'd just like to bring up and ask how the city of Middleton can declare racism a public health crisis, yet not address the inherent racism that exists within policing and schools that This data has been brought up many times, including last meeting. Also, over 650 community members have called for the end to the SRO program in a petition that has been circulated to the council previously. I'm speaking today to urge and plead with you to not reconsider the SRO contract with MCPASD at the last meeting and to not renew any further SRO contracts brought forth until the district has received adequate community input on the matter. I would first like to state that from a budget perspective, the district will be online at the beginning of next school year, yet they have approved 2 SRO contracts, the one you've already seen and an amended one from last night, that allocate funding to SROs even though they will not be needed for at least part of the school year. The city of Middleton should not have to pay for a position that isn't being utilized. I would also like to go through a timeline that highlights how unwilling MCPASD admin and the school board have been to allow for community input before a contract is passed. On June 29th, President Ashley responded to a letter signed by community members, including alumni, staff, students, and parents, asking for the board to vote again to not renew the SRO contract and to seek adequate community input before approving another contract. She said, and I quote, "As a means of gathering community input on this and other critical issues, the district created the Community School Partnership Committee," end quote. This committee was not made aware of the contract renewal and were not consulted. Furthermore, committee members were sent a letter to the board calling for the end to this program and were written off. In response to this letter, these community members on July 1st called for the board to hold a public forum on the SRO topic before their July 13th and 20th meetings that directly included all impacted community members and actively reached out to underrepresented and marginalized communities of color, not just white people. The board ignored this request and did not respond. On July 18th, the board refused to allow for members of the school community partnership to give the presentation that they will be giving tonight. These members were denied from presenting by the same board that stated that this committee was crucial for community input. While this request for a late agenda addition was for a late agenda addition and President Ashley stated the agenda was already packed, I would like to highlight that the board was asked numerous times to dedicate a meeting to SROs so that adequate time could be dedicated to the issue. They also
30 seconds.
Read heartfelt community letters due to time, but instead allowed for a 40-minute presentation by mostly 5 police officers that was biased. When discussing the community input, President Ashley said Perry Hibner, who was in charge of community and media relations, went in neighborhoods of vulnerable communities, tried to share info and writing letters for the meeting. I commend Perry for doing his best, but sending a white man for a short period of time into a neighborhood is only a start and not adequate community outreach. It's absurd that the board would paint this as so. I sent an email earlier with further information on the board's action, but reiterate, they were inadequate and a disgrace.
Time's up.
The bias of this presentation can be summed up by direct quotes from SRO Tyler Lothar, who referred to the very valid and fact-based calls to reevaluate the program with community input, quote, "change for the sake of change," end quote. And when referring to community members who have said that police
time is up.
Please wrap up. So
they were, quote, throwing around the school to prison pipeline thing, end quote. It's terrifying to watch the very real system that exists for people of color, like the school to prison pipeline, be so easily disregarded in a presentation put on and allowed by NCPASD.
could you please wrap up?
Lauren, your time is up.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. I'm sorry. Everybody has the same rules, 3 minutes. Who's next, Mike? Thank you.
Caitlin is up next.
Caitlin?
Hi, thank you for listening to me again. I'm here as a parent of 3 children who are biracial. I want to first say thank you for actually listening to parents and students, unlike the meeting last night that was completely slanted, completely biased, and took no consideration into how students who are not white actually feel. My experience with the Middleton Police Department, as I have shared on numerous occasions with city officials, has made my family consider moving out of Middleton. Not because we don't love this city or the school district, but because of the police. My children, who are young, are terrified of the Middleton police officers. They do not need to be terrified in our schools. They do not feel safe in a school with a police officer. When I was listening to the comments last night, watching on the Facebook of the board meeting, other parents with students of color shared the exact same sentiment. Their children would take the long way around the school because the officer was standing there, not because they were doing anything wrong, but because of the anxiety they feel I am begging you and pleading with you. If the system is broken, like students of color and parents have shared numerous letters, do not keep a broken system until it is fixed. We are going virtual. Reevaluate the program, and then maybe think about a contract. There are so many steps that need to be taken in the city of Middleton with the police department. It is not safe for them to be in school with children of color right now. My children do not need to be terrified any longer, and I am not exaggerating at all. I sent my letter to all of you, the mayor, and all of those on the council with I did not list every instance of our interactions. I listed a few. Please, please reevaluate this program and then consider putting it back in the schools. Don't let a broken system interact with our children until it is fixed.
30 seconds.
Begging you to please vote against renewing the contract, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate that. So who is next, Mike?
Charlotte Newman.
Charlotte, you're up. Please state your name, your address, and you've got 3 minutes.
So my name is Charlotte Newman, and I'm a current student at Middleton High School. I would prefer not to share my address as I am a minor.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. At the last Common Council meeting, some council members were upset at the lack of statistics relevant to Middleton specifically. Well, here are a few statistics from Middleton. In 2015, despite only making up 4.4% of Middleton High School's student population, Black students made up 28.9% of in-school suspensions and 31.4% of out-of-school suspensions, according to the Civil Rights Data Collection. According to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, in the 2018 to 2019 school year, Black students were reported for behavioral violations at a rate of 15 times that of their white counterparts, according to graphics made by Annie Baker. Please don't try to tell me that there isn't a school-to-prison pipeline or that it doesn't disproportionately affect Black students, or for that matter, that the presence of armed police in our schools doesn't exacerbate that iniquity. There are also some complaints about the fact that many council members received complaints on this issue, which seem to follow a form letter. As opposed to evaluating the formularity of the letters, I ask council members to simply look at the sheer magnitude of people who object to the presence of police officers in our schools. That is more important than whether or not someone made up their own letter or utilized someone else's ideas because they thought that they were more eloquent. Currently, you'll find that there's a petition circulating which has upwards of 600 signatures, and all of those people are opposed to the presence of SROs in our schools. And yet it sometimes feels like we're speaking in an echo chamber, which is created by our elected officials. When we ask to speak, we are not always able to, as at the last school board meeting. And when we do speak, whether that is in the form of email or passionate speeches, the statistics we share are trampled over and whataboutism is employed to an astounding degree. And when people listen to us, they label us as emotional. In my case, I'll do that for you. I'm absolutely emotional about this issue because the truth is I'm tired of the injustices which my classmates face every time that they have to enter their schools. My classmates should not have to face the generational trauma which stems from the mass incarceration of people of color every time that they go through those doors. My classmates should not be suspended or arrested for petty and minor infractions. My classmates should not have to come up with an original and eloquent email for you to take their concerns seriously. And my classmates should not have to plead with elected officials to take anti-racist action and protect them in their own schools. We are children. We should not have police officers be our first line of response to a student in distress when our psychologists are overloaded and underpaid. How much more good would it do to have another licensed psychologist available to students as opposed to what essentially amounts to an armed guard? I believe that that would be a very good trade-off. Children should not be surveyed by the police, especially not in a place of learning. This should absolutely not be normal. And if your response is to cite school shootings, please find me data which indicates that SROs stopped active shooter situations in schools. The paradigm shooting and those like it should not be included in this data, as any officer could have responded. I can find plenty of instances, including in Wisconsin, when SROs have in fact harmed students and not protected them. Any action that is not anti-racist perpetuates the current state of being in this country, which is inherently racist as it was built on principles of racism. An action to preserve the position of SROs in our schools would perpetuate this racism, as seen in the statistics provided.
Please try to wrap up. Try to wrap up. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Mike. What's next now?
Leland Pan.
So Leland, if you are adult, then please state your name and address, otherwise just your name.
Hi, my name is Leland Pan. I'm a graduate of Middleton High School in 2010. My parents live on 7213 Knoll Court, Middleton. I was just wanted to chime in as a former Dane County Board Supervisor and who oversaw the criminal justice system at the county level, and as somebody who's worked in the criminal justice system on the ground and a policy level, and as somebody who's worked on equity issues and is also a current teacher. I wanted to just speak out against the contract with SROs. From a policy standpoint, schools and the criminal justice system should be as separate as they possibly can be. There's so much research that shows that any interaction with the criminal justice system has a negative outcome for academic outcomes for students. And also on a personal note, I'll say that, I'm very privileged to have gone to college on a scholarship, to have gotten a master's degree, to be getting a second master's degree, in part because of the work at Middleton and the educators there. And a key part of that has been that I would not have called myself an angel when I was in high school. And I was never treated with any sort of punitive measures. I was always supported. My misbehaviors were always viewed as a teenager finding themselves. And it is too common in education that we do not give Black and Latino youth that same flexibility. And so too often the response to their teen angst and finding where they are is the police, is suspensions, is all sorts of punitive measures that only hurt their potential for success in the future. So on a very personal level, I feel it would be unfair to all the Black and brown kids I went to school with, and to the ones that are currently going to school at a school that set me up for success.
Hannah, you're up.
Hello, my name is Hannah Nogani. I'm a 2019 graduate of Middleton High School, and my address is 1 Prairie Hill Court. I would like to read some comments by community members on the school board's Facebook live stream last night that were completely ignored, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names, and again, feel free. Obviously cut me off at 3 minutes, but I'm just going to go down the list. So Jenny Von Drack said, I'm really shocked at how one-sided this is. There are so many who have been part of this system firsthand who have asked us to speak about this topic, and yet we are only allowed to hear the police voice. In addition, most of the duties being described can be done through a police partnership not housed in the schools. This presentation is going to do so much damage for so many in our community, staff included. Trust and faith in the system being destroyed. Megan Diaz-Ricks said, this presentation is biased and teetering on propaganda. I am so disappointed, especially in Dana. She also said, blaming school shootings on the lone wolf in mental health crisis is a cop-out and extremely problematic. It deflects from the real issue of the systematic problem of police who were originally placed in schools for school shootings, but it ended up disenfranchising and over-policing thousands of Black and brown students. The school-to-prison pipeline. There is no representation from our Black and brown students and their families right now. ... This is so biased. I am so saddened by this. As a mother of a Black boy in MCPASD, you're telling him he doesn't matter. C. Mahormanyana, I think is how you say it, said, why are there only police officers talking about this subject? We need many different viewpoints because this is definitely biased. This live stream, and then again they commented, this live stream is so biased. Why are you only allowing SROs to voice their opinions? Please give other viewpoints or this live stream is absolutely pointless. And again, so are we actually going to let people of color share their opinions or just white SROs? And again, what was the point of this live stream? It was completely one-sided. You only let SROs share their opinions, so of course they're going to support keeping SROs. Let people with other viewpoints share their opinions. Very disappointed. Anahi Lumo said, I had a pretty good relationship with Rich O'Connor, who was SRO when I was there, and yet I didn't agree with some situations he had to involve himself in, and I didn't agree with an SRO being in school. And he also said, you are forcing a relationship to happen. It's not authentic, so it's not helping at all.
30 seconds.
Coffee Cook said, I feel bad, but I kind of want the SRO to stay away from my kid. Lori Roden said, how can they only allow one side of this story to be heard by those watching now? Those who haven't seen the data or been educated on this issue? There's always been discomfort. It's just that people have now found the courage to say enough. I just want to read Caitlin's, and she says, yes, please keep traumatizing children like mine while you collect your data. Moira Rulli said, we need the students to speak for sure. And
Mike,
thank you, Hannah. Really appreciate your sharing
as well. Mike,
Mayor
Ahmed Nogani, would you be able to recognize me for 3 minutes as well?
Who is? Absolutely, yes.
Would you be able to recognize me?
Yes.
With all due respect, with all due respect, I think the Middleton Police Department are our neighbors and wonderful, and we love them. And I'm grateful for all their service. And there's nothing I can say but to praise their performance and their kindness and their community service. I think I like to just point out that maybe we're asking the police to do a job that it's best done by a different set of skills that the policemen are capable of dealing with teenagers at the high school level, perhaps. And I just want to make sure that when we are making this decision, we are not exposing our wonderful police officers to situations, frankly, beyond what their training or their education or their set of skills are. And it just worries me that when there is such a negative sense of emotions out there, that we are asking them to do something that it's unfair to them and unfair to us as a community. And are we training them properly? Do they have the background? Do they have the education? Do they have the set of tools that they need to serve this real sensitive mission, exaggerated by this current environment? And I just ask you to reconsider their training and their capacity before we approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Who's next, Mike?
First of all, for Lori, that was Hamid Nugani, Hamid. And the next is Kristen Wilson.
Kristen, you are up.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Wilson. I'm a school social worker at the high school, and I have been there since 1995 with many of you on this Zoom. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. I'm reading from a small part of a statement I submitted earlier. My intent is to further explain why, as a member of the social work team, I, along with my social work colleagues, am advocating that we suspend the school resource officer program. I came to this belief over several years and then only recently gave voice to it during my conversations with colleagues. As staff, we have engaged in anti-racist work, trauma-sensitive school training, and have generally grown in our understanding of the developmental and mental health needs of our students. Neglected initiatives that could support community building, community health, and ultimately foster a safer school climate. Advocating for the suspension of our school resource officer program is a deeply emotional issue for me, and it's personal, and one that I have reflected upon deeply. I began my work at Middleton High School as the only social worker, and I was part-time at the time with 1,200 students. Having just left working at the Dane County Rape Crisis Center, where the Madison Police Department had launched a specialized training for officers for a sensitive crimes team, I was used to partnering and collaborating with law enforcement. Pursuing a collaborative working relationship with law enforcement is a welcomed and necessary part of my work. We learn from each other, we work together, we laugh a lot, sometimes we laugh at each other, we commiserate. We understand that occasionally there is healthy tension between our roles as we work to support students, but always there's mutual respect. I continue to have deep respect and fondness for the members of the police department, especially for the very brave officers who have served as school resource officers. It's the program I am no longer in support of, not the Middleton Police Department. environment. Program. We know that not all of our students feel safer, and in fact, some of our students, particularly our Black and Brown students, and families feel less safe with an officer present in the building. And I believe that we have put some of our students at greater risk of harm because of our responses to their behaviors. Being safe and feeling safe is a privilege, and when we are engaged in a program that does not afford this privilege to all, then we must speak up and do better. There is so much more I could say, as this is a very complicated issue, but our students and alumni are working hard to tell us about their experiences. How students and families perceive and experience this program should matter to us, as they are the ones who we are charged to serve. Thank you very much for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that. Who's next, Mike?
Aiden Loop.
Aiden, you're up.
Hello, my name is Aiden Loop. My address is 9539 Sand Hill Road, and let me know if you can't hear me. I'm a captain on the MHS debate team and vice president of the Model United Nations team, but I don't speak on behalf of those teams. I'm here to speak on behalf of my friends and peers who do not always feel safe at this school. There are a few reasons for this, and oftentimes it isn't personal. It's about how SROs impact students' psyche and the negative impact it has on our learning environment. While I do not fear for my life around an officer, there are many who do. If board members had any significant human empathy, they would realize how scary it can be for a minority to enter their space of learning and be greeted by an armed man. I urge you all not to reconsider the SRO contract, and as for the small amendment proposed review program conducted by the police and the Middleton district leaders, I don't trust you to do that. At nearly every opportunity they get, the MHS board demonstrates that it lacks both empathy and critical thinking skills. I remember when they forced students into an auditorium and a cop was on stage with a police dog. Do I have to tell you that that is not okay? Do I have to tell you and educate you about how Black, brown, and queer communities have intergenerational or personal trauma regarding police, especially the dogs that they use to terrorize those communities today even? Another example. During the high school's nude crisis, staff walked into full classrooms and called out students' names. Every student knew what was going on, and any student could have told you that girls would start getting slut-shamed and possibly be put in danger. But you couldn't tell that because you are out of touch and you lack empathy and critical thinking skills. I don't trust you to evaluate our trauma, our experiences. I don't trust you to evaluate, renew this contract and then decide whether you want to renew it again. Quite frankly, I think you should listen to your students and just end the contract. Listen to your students. The fact that you need parents and alumni to do unpaid emotional and mental labor, organizing petitions and using their free time before you will even consider listening to your students is very reflective of your disconnect with your students and your refusal to respect their experiences and their opinions. We know better than you how they affect our learning environment.
30 seconds.
We know better how they affect our learning environment. We see how our friends and peers are scared of these police officers, and they don't tell you these things a lot of times because they're scared of telling you these things. I've had personal conversations with staff members who do not feel comfortable sharing their true opinions on the school resource officers because they fear that their careers can be jeopardized. So quite frankly, I think you need to listen to your students and don't even consider renewing this contract.
Thank you, Aiden. Who's next, Mike?
Peter Opitz.
Peter, you're up.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Peter Opitz. 6753 Black Cherry Lane is the address. I want to begin by thanking you for your dedication to hearing community input. This is a commitment, however, that is not shared by the school board. Many of you were disconcerted 2 weeks ago when you heard about the process by which the school board approved the SRO contract. They did it unanimously on the consent agenda with no discussion. And here we are, nearly a month after that reckless action, and I say to you tonight, nothing has changed. The school board has utilized the COVID-19 pandemic to adopt a policy of censorship and a blatant disregard for democratic norms. Since a small group of alumni met briefly with district administrators to discuss our petition that, as I checked right before this meeting, has garnered over 715 signatures, our request for additional meetings, a live public comment period at the school board meeting, and a special meeting on SROs to hear from community members have all been repeatedly rejected by Superintendent Dana Minogue and Board President Annette Ashley. On July 16th, power holders in our community met to discuss the SRO contract. All of these power holders, apart from a couple district principals, previously expressed support for the SRO program. How are we supposed to have a civil and effective discussion about this issue when only biased power holders are invited to sit down at the table? On Friday, after learning that police and district administrators would present in front of the school board, we politely requested that the school board hear the presentation that you will hear later tonight from members of the school community partnership. This was flat out rejected by Board President Annette Ashley. She said, and I quote, "The bulk of Monday's meeting will be dedicated to the fall scenario planning," end quote. Yet at the horrifying school board meeting last night, board members heard a presentation that lasted for over 40 minutes, involving 4 district administrators and 5 current or former police officers. The meeting was one-sided, propagandistic, and the board president refused to read or share written public comments submitted by community members. How can they listen to a police presentation for 40 minutes, but refuse to even read our public comments, let alone a 15-minute presentation by members of the school community partnership that they created? The conduct of the school board members is unbefitting of elected officials. Regardless of your personal beliefs on the SRO issue, all of you should vote against this proposal simply due to the abominable way that the school board has conducted itself. Because the school board refuses to listen to community voices, alumni have created a virtual town hall to take place on Monday, August 3rd at 7 p.m. to uplift the voices of our community. We should not have to do this, and we desperately need your help because it is clear that we cannot hold the school district accountable for their actions alone. Your job here tonight is one of accountability. You must ensure that the school board listens to community voices. And to speak briefly on the SRO issue, we know that our police have major racial disparities in arrest rates. Arrests of Black individuals increased by 30% in the last 3 years, despite a 9% decrease in total arrests. This is not an issue about individuals. Some of the SROs and Middleton police officers are great people. This is a systemic issue, one that can only be solved by considering broader data and studies and prioritizing the voices of our communities of color. And I'd like to point out to anyone, if I can just point out, if you want to speak, please click raise your hand in the panel. I think for people who join late, they might not understand that. Thank you.
Please wrap up. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Who's next, Mike?
My apologies to this person before I say the name. It appears to be Akash Patnaik.
It's Akash Patnaik.
Akash, you're up.
Yeah, my name is Akash Patnaik. I'm a resident of 7806 Cobblestone Circle in Middleton, and I'm Middleton High School class of 2016. I will be reading a public comment that I submitted yesterday to the board that was not read at this meeting as requested. So thank you for properly considering the SRO contract issue. Thus far, there has been no data showing that school resource officers in schools positively impact all students. Rather, we've heard isolated and vague anecdotes of positive relationship building from overwhelmingly white demographics. Additionally, the Middleton High School and Middleton Cross Plains Area School District Crisis Emergency Preparedness Plan cites teachers and staff members as the only members of the response team, with outside law enforcement being used only for training and not as the mandated first response. Furthermore, last year we saw with the Parkland shooting that the school resource officers are protected by law in case they do not protect students and flee from an emergency situation. These two claims nullify the argument that SROs are necessary for school shootings. Furthermore, the school district has previously acknowledged that mass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline are deleterious social consequences. So I fail to see how instituting police officers in our schools help mitigate these issues. Thank you very much. I just want to reiterate what Peter said, that as alumni and community members, we'll be holding a virtual town hall on Monday, August 3rd at 7 p.m. More information will be sent out later, but please mark your calendars and all are welcome to this event.
Thank you, Akash. Appreciate it. Mike, who's next?
Steve Britt.
Steve Britt. Steve, you're up. Please identify yourself and your address.
My name is Steve Britt. I currently live in Lodi, Wisconsin. I was a Middleton police officer for 26 years, and I served as a school resource officer for 4 years during that time. I can tell you that It was 4 incredibly gratifying years in the school, and it really changed the trajectory of my career. This isn't about arrests. You've heard a lot of data about suspensions, but you haven't heard anything about the actual arrests of those students. If these physical altercations that take place in the school, they're going to continue to happen. The Middleton High School is the single greatest call generator for the Middleton Police Department, has been for decades. There's 3,000 people, students and staff in that building, soon to be closer to 4. There's more people in that one building than there are in many towns. They have a constant need for police interaction. That one lone officer in the school actually helps, and I know there's people going to just get up in arms with this, but they lessen the number of arrests there. They know the students. I interacted on a day-to-day basis with dozens, hundreds of students, really. There was hundreds that I never saw. There was hundreds that I saw on a regular basis and had wonderful relationships. To this day, I'm still in contact with a half a dozen kids that were students that I arrested or I had counseling, spent a lot of time with while I was in the schools. Those relationships are incredibly important to me to this day. This program isn't about arrests. It's not about suspensions. We don't make those suspension decisions. That's the school side of things. We do get involved when there's serious law violations in the building. And help the school district with them. They're going to still have these violations. They're still going to call the police if you disband this program. What they're going to get is a police officer from the street who's going to come in and have no relationship with the school staff members, or a very minimal relation, because they're going to have a lot of other duties. They're not going to have any significant relationships with one of these students. So they're going to need to respond to the immediate crisis at hand and deal with it as they're trained to do. That's what I would expect a police officer from the street to do. That's not what the liaisons do. They get involved. They get involved with the social workers. Kristen and I worked for years together and had a very close relationship. And we worked together on dozens and dozens of cases and built wonderful relationships. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 students. I'm talking about hundreds of students that I interacted with on a daily basis. Yes, there are some students that have had difficult relationships with police departments. But
30 seconds.
None of those students are coming here today to tell you about difficult times with Middleton police officers in our schools. They're there to build relationships. That's the most important thing we do. Every one of these protests, every one of these defund the police organizations all talk about community policing as the single most important program. This is the single most important community policing program for the city of Middleton. Our school resource officers are just incredibly valuable and have been an incredible resource.
Time, Steve.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Wrap up or you're done? Okay, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Who is next, Mike?
Stephen K.
Stephen K, you're up.
Hey, everyone. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Great.
hear you.
Gotcha. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Collison. Address is 5710 Sand Hill Drive. And once again, I'm going to speak from my heart like I did a couple weeks ago. And I promise everything I'm going to say is going to make sense. But first, I think what's important is to offer context about the city of Middleton. There was a man named Solomon Freeman who was born a slave in Kentucky. And he was bought by the Bush family for $10. And the Bush family ended up moving from Missouri up into Wisconsin, which was a free state. And what ended up happening was Solomon and his mother were free because it's a free state. And he ended up staying behind as a servant to the Bush family. And what happened in Middleton, or what would become Middleton, was very strange for the times. They ended up funding Solomon's education. They ended up, when Solomon's mother got sick and was eventually dying, they ended up paying for her medical care. And then Solomon ended up becoming a preacher here in Middleton. And he ended up becoming this big civic leader and a very valued member of Middleton. And what ended up happening after he died was all of his stuff was burned and he was forgotten, and his grave went unmarked for 70 years. He died in 1900 and he didn't get his marker on his grave until 1974. So as citizens of Middleton, I think it's important for us to recognize that we are arbiters of that history. And it is important for us to recognize how we contribute to any kind of racist history that's going on in this town. He died in 1900, and I have to ask myself, 120 years later, what has changed in the city of Middleton? The same racism that allowed Solomon's stuff just be burned and for him to be forgotten is the same racism that lets the Board of Education continue to ignore people of color. It's the same racism that lets Superintendent Minogue ignore the petitions and the letters and the emails that we've been sending her for months. It's the same racism that lets the Board of Education say that, oh, we're trying to take care of 8,000 students, fully knowing that some of those 8,000 students are people of color. So ask yourselves, what has changed in 120 years? Why is this town still so committed to the same kind of racism 120 years later? It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous that we have to go through to these kinds of lengths to even be heard, even be listened to. And I think what should be said too is that Tony Robinson, who died in Madison, is in the same cemetery as Solomon Freeman. What does it mean when a victim of racism and brutality is in the same cemetery as a Black man who was freed? I don't see any kind of change. This board says that they're committed to anti-racism, but I'm seeing now that talk is cheap. Nothing has changed in this town in 120 years, and we have to be better. We have to do better. Today is the day to do better and to change what has happened over the past 120 years, to listen to the Black and brown people who have come to you guys. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Who is next, Mike?
Elise Armani.
Elise, you're up.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to our testimonies. I'm a 2013 alumni working on my PhD and teaching undergraduate coursework at Stony Brook University. And I have been really proud to see the recent graduate students, or recent grads of Middleton and current students as, you know, just a great example of the incredible education that some students are able to access at Middleton. And I know that we're all here because of our collective investment in the success of MCPASD students. I want to reiterate the need to center the voices of the youth, particularly students and parents of color, who, as has been described, have been strategically silenced by the school board. And I hope that you have taken up your responsibility to research and review the data, which has been generously compiled by student activists for your easy access. As a white student at MHS, I was awarded many privileges, among which one of the largest was forgiveness and room for growth. At Middleton, I was given space to experiment, make mistakes, and essentially be a teenager. But despite this, I was able to move through my years there without suspension, expulsion, or arrest, which had enabled me to then receive a bachelor's and a master's degree and to go on to work on my PhD. However, many of my peers were not offered the same compassion and space for personal growth, processes of maturing, and existing as a Black or brown teenager. As statistics which have been shared several times now have shown, discipline disproportionately targets students of color at Middleton. And while the school board is working tirelessly to rush this contract through without student or alumni input, as Kristen Wilson shared, necessary and overdue training and resources to support students of color have been underfunded and underinvested in. It's my firm belief that student safety can be protected and student conduct can be enforced without the need for police presence in schools. It's not difficult to see the overwhelming evidence pointing to the failure of SROs to protect against school shootings or other school-targeted violence, whereas they've been quite successful in funneling Black and brown students into the school-to-prison pipeline. Law, sociological, and higher education studies increasingly demonstrate the negative impact of SROs and their role in the school-to-prison pipeline, which again disproportionately impacts Black students as well as students with disabilities. The rapid increase of law enforcement presence, including SROs in schools, has resulted in students being increasingly implicated and referred to the carceral system for minor offenses which do not threaten school or public safety. Moreover, these arrests lead to lasting psychological, financial, and legal implications for these students, their parents, and their community as their education is disrupted. This disproportionate bias, suspension, expulsion, and alienation of students of color from our school system places these same students at a greater risk of dropping out, future arrest, and loss of human rights that accompany our current carceral system. This all comes at a tremendous cost for these students, their families, and their classmates, as well as the taxpayers and the broader community. It's egregious and unforgivable to deny impacted students their right to education and to deny their classmates, educators, and community members the valuable contributions and perspectives of these impacted students. Law enforcement in schools is not the best nor most cost-effective way to achieve the goals of keeping students safe. SROs and law enforcement in schools are not needed to keep kids safe, especially when youth pay the price for becoming involved in the juvenile justice system and suffer a lifetime of negative effects as a result. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Who's next, Mike?
Charles Myers.
Charles Myers. Charles, you're up.
All right. 1 moment, I'm sorry. My name is Charles Myers. I live at 7007 Century Avenue, Middleton, Wisconsin. I speak as a proud parent of a soon-to-be Middleton student. Budgets are fundamentally about the values of those drafting them and how those values inform their choices made with public funds. In light of that, I would like to pose the following questions to anyone in favor of Alder West's motion to recommit. 1, why are we enabling the school board's decision to prioritize this expenditure over full-time dedicated social workers for each elementary school instead of the current split staff setup? 2, why are we enabling the school board's decision to prioritize this expenditure over adding additional support staff for middle school students to ensure that those in crisis are able to get the immediate help that they need? 3, what value does an officer being physically present add at a middle school, which is both 3/10 of a mile from the police station and which will almost certainly be closed through the majority of the duration of the proposed contract? That question applies to every resource officer, the second half. What, if any, fiscal impact will Middleton bear as the result of non-renewal of this agreement? 5, what has changed in the intervening 2 weeks since council's last vote to make the answers to these questions any different than what they were originally? I have attended meetings or reviewed common council minutes for the years I have lived here and can think of only a handful of instances where so many speakers were so uniformly against a proposal as there were on July 7th. The motion before council tonight asks to ignore those sentiments in favor of a motion which is fundamentally a request to waste taxpayer money on an officer for a school which will likely never be in physical session for the duration of this contract. I ask our council members to listen to the voters who elected them and reject this motion. I reserve the balance of my time, which is 1 minute.
Thank you, Charles. Who's next, Mike?
Mayor, the only other person with the hand up, I believe I already spoke for 3 minutes. That's Aiden Loop. And the other person is Margot Sorensen.
Okay, let's go with Margot Sorensen.
My name is Margot Sorensen. My parents reside at 4323 Red Hill Path in Middleton. I was granted the opportunity to have a fantastic Middleton area graduation, which enabled me to attend the University of Michigan to study social inequality and community change, which is the topic we are discussing right now. I would like to take the majority of my time to share a quote that changed my entire perspective on anti-racism to once again plead with you to continuously reject this proposal and contract, and please stop bringing it back for more consideration in light of what we are talking about. This is a quote from Beverly Daniel Tatum. She says, quote, I sometimes visualize the ongoing cycle of racism as a moving walkway at the airport. Active racist behavior is the equivalent of walking fast on the conveyor belt. You're getting to your destination faster. Passive racism is equivalent to standing still on the walkway. No overt effort is being made, but the conveyor belt is still moving the bystanders along to the same destination as those who are actively walking there. Some of the bystanders may feel the motion of the conveyor belt, see the active racists ahead of them, and choose to turn around. But unless they are walking actively in the opposite direction at a speed faster than the conveyor belt, unless they are being actively anti-racist, they will find themselves carried along with the others in becoming racist. In continuously bringing this contract back up and continuously wanting to hear more propaganda from the Helen brands, who, like you said, are the ones who majoritively signed that 45-person letter when we have a petition that's basically the size of the student body of when I attended there. You are actively ignoring and actively choosing to be racist. We are giving you the data. We are giving you the facts. We are doing emotional labels for you. We're doing the physical label for you and collecting data, providing templates to the community. We are back up, are choosing to listen to anecdotal evidence by police officers who say they gained a positive experience from being involved with the students. The SROs are not supposed to be there to gain positive experience themselves. They are supposed to have a positive experience on the student's education. That is why the students are there. The students are there to gain an education. They're not there to be criminalized. I will freely say, as
30 seconds.
I do not longer live in Middleton, I would not have graduated had I been a minority student. The amount of time that I engaged in illegal or suspendable activity and was never given a punitive measure for it, I was allowed to grow. I was treated like a teenager, like someone who had the opportunity for growth. And I'm incredibly grateful for it because I am here now, entirely educated on the subject. But Black and brown and minority students and LGBTQ students are not allowed the freedom to grow. I urge you once again to reject this proposal.
Thank you so much. So anybody else, Mike?
Charles Myers has a remaining minute on his time.
Okay, Charles, you may take your minute.
I yield the balance of my time to Aiden Loop.
Okay, Aiden, you're up. Aiden Loop.
Can you hear me? Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving your time to me. I love this opportunity to speak. I want to reiterate and expand on a major theme for today, and that theme is listening. I'm urging you to listen to students, not just because they deserve to be listened to, but also Middleton schools would be so much better. Listening to students would enable you to address problems proactively. In my last speech, I gave examples of instances that traumatized students, and these things wouldn't have happened, right, if you had been actively looking for students' input before you acted in certain ways or enacted certain policies that negatively harmed students. But also for specifically in terms of SROs and school shootings, every time there's a threat, I get a text from a friend or a random classmate that there's a threat and that I shouldn't come to school tomorrow before the school says anything, right? Because the students know about these threats before you guys do. They know before the cops do. And we have already implemented a system of mutual aid and protection of each other. These cops aren't helping me stay any more safe. They're not stopping these school shootings necessarily. I yield my time.
Thank you, Eddie. Anyone else, Mike?
Betsy Day.
Betsy? Betsy Day.
I think no, she's still there. Betsy Day.
Is she muted, Mike?
Yeah, I just asked her to unmute. Betsy Day?
Please unmute yourself.
She's unmuted now. Betsy, you can speak. No, she's not speaking, so.
Okay.
That's all the folks who have had their hands up to speak.
Okay, anyone else who may want to speak at this time? Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment part of this meeting. And at this time, we are going to go to it's beyond 7:45. We're going to public hearing. This is the General Implementation Plan Amendment, Community of Bishop's Bay, the Farm and Reserve Hill neighborhoods, relocate 13 residential lots for church and school, Texas Longhorn Drive. I have gotten 3 communications on the record for this. One of this, Pastor Joel Brand from Tom Wilson, who is the clerk and city administrator for town administrator for Westport, and Mark and Martha Harnois. Anybody who wants to speak, including these guys, if they want to speak.
Tom Wilson has his hand up.
Tom, you are up. Tom Wilson, town of Westport.
I'm hoping you can hear me now.
We
Can
can.
you hear
Oh,
me?
yes.
That's good. Okay, I am Tom Wilson. I work for the town of Westport. I'm their town attorney, administrator, clerk, and treasurer. We have spoken before, all of us. I did submit a support email and some relevant documents, which Mark Opitz had advised that were included with the packet. So I don't want to repeat a lot of that. It's just that the town supports the change that's recommended by the unanimous votes of the town plan commission, the town board, the city plan commission, and the joint zoning committee, which did that after a public hearing. I'm available for questions if there are any. And the only thing that I really respectfully request is that after you hold your public hearing, that you reorder the agenda and vote to approve this as recommended by the various bodies, again, right after this hearing. And Mike, that is all I have for you today, unless people have questions later.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Mayor.
And Abby Attoon has her hand up.
Abby, you're up.
I emailed to the mayor and council the testimony that we received, and Mayor Brower, you mentioned 3 of the individuals who reached out to the city. There was also one additional person who wrote in support of the proposal, and that was Tammy Farrell.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wants to speak?
No other hands are up.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that part of the meeting, the public hearing, and we are going to move on to the under planning and zoning. Item number 2 is the general implementation plan amendment, community of Bishops Bay, the farm and reserve hill neighborhoods, relocate 13 residential lots for church and school, Texas Longhorn Drive. I need a motion to approve.
So moved. This is Luke.
This is Emily. I'll second.
Okay, motion by Luke and a second by Emily. Any questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to approve the GIP for GIP amendment for community of Bishops Bay, the farm and reserve hill neighborhoods. And this is to relocate 13 residential lots for church and school for Texas Longhorn Drive. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Tom, you're free now, and also the others. We go to now under the resolutions, and I'm going to ask, the first one is 2020-34. This is the recognizing racism as a public health crisis, and I'm going to ask Elder Fusard to read it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas race is a social construction with no biological basis, and whereas racism is a social system with multiple dimensions, individual racism is internalized or interpersonal, and systemic racism is institutional or structural, and is a system of structuring opportunity and assigning value based on the social interpretation of how one looks that unfairly disadvantages some individuals and communities, unfairly advantages other individuals and communities, and saps the strength of the whole society through the waste of human resources. Whereas racism causes persistent racial discrimination in housing, education, employment, and criminal justice, and an emerging body of research demonstrates that racism is a social determinant of health. And whereas more than 100 studies have linked racism to worse health outcomes, and whereas in Wisconsin, the highest excess death rates exist for African American and Native Americans at every stage in the life course, And our infant mortality rate for infants of non-Hispanic Black women is the highest in the nation. And whereas the American Public Health Association launched a national campaign against racism, and whereas Healthiest Wisconsin 2020 states that Wisconsin must address persistent disparities in health outcomes and the social, economic, educational, and environmental inequities that contribute to them. And whereas the Wisconsin Public Health Association has adopted in 2010 the resolution achieving health equity, and in 2014, the resolution promoting a health in all policies framework to guide policymaking, and in 2017 convened a racial equity work group. And whereas public health's responsibilities to address racism include reshaping our discourse and agenda so that we all actively engage in racial justice work, and whereas while there is no epidemiological definition of crisis, the health impact of racism clearly rises to the definition proposed by Gale. The problem must affect large numbers of people, it must threaten health over the long term, and it must require the adoption of large-scale solutions. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Middleton Mayor and the Common Council, together with city staff, that number one, asserts that racism is a public health crisis affecting our entire society. Number two, directs the city administrator to develop a strategic plan that includes goals and objectives to ensure racial equity is a core element of the city's operations. Number three, works to create an inclusive community and identifies specific activities to increase diversity. Number four, incorporates inclusion and equity and offers educational training to expand the city's leadership understanding of how racism affects people. Number five, advocates for policies that improve health in communities of color. And number six, encourages other local, state, and national entities to recognize racism as a public health crisis. This resolution was adopted at a regular meeting of the Middleton Common Council this 21st of July, 2020.
Thank you, Luke. Need a motion to approve?
Move approval.
This is Robert. I second.
Okay, motion by Susan West and second by Robert. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. We are on to item number 2. This is resolution number 2020-38 to initiate a central urban service area amendment, Twin Sunset Road. This was small parcel we had annexed a little while ago. Need a motion to approve.
This is Robert. Yeah, this is Robert. I would make a motion to approve this resolution.
Need a second. It is just a amendment for the urban services.
This is Katie. I'll second it.
Second by Katie. Any questions or comments?
Yes, this is Larry. In the now therefore be it resolved, the last word on the third line, Middleton, should be stricken because there is not a separate Middleton urban service area. We are simply part of the central urban service area. And since this document is being submitted to the CARPC, we want to make sure it reads correctly.
I'd like to modify my motion to approve this resolution based on also striking the word Middleton in the end of that line. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Larry, and thank you, Robert. All those in favor of the motion to initiate a central urban services area amendment for Twin Sunset Road, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 3. This is 2020-39. This is repudiating racist covenants and local real property records, and I will ask Alden Nelson to read it. Katie Nelson.
Sorry. Whereas in discussion at the council meeting of June 16 concerning racism and violence against African Americans, a Middleton resident property owner mentioned her horror in discovering a racist covenant in her property's chain of title. And whereas the subject covenant in the Park Lawn neighborhood reads in part that, quote, no part of said platted premises shall ever be conveyed to, used, owned, or occupied by any persons other than that of the Caucasian race, either as owner or tenant, unquote. And whereas the aforementioned language is morally repugnant, immoral, and has no basis in law, having been declared unenforceable under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States in 1948 by the U.S. Supreme Court in Shelley versus Kramer, 334 U.S. 1, 1948. And whereas real property laws are governed by state law, and the city is preempted from creating any local ordinance that would change the legal framework governing the formal amendment of existing deed restrictions or covenants. And whereas such racist covenants are modifiable by the homeowners, but the process may in some instances prove to be relatively time-consuming and costly. And whereas the city attorney advises that individual property owners could record a form of repudiation of such covenants on their own property. One such example reads, quote, we, the name of the owners of the property at their address, acknowledge that this deed is subject to an unenforceable, unlawful restriction or covenant excluding non-Caucasians from this neighborhood. We repudiate this clause and state that we welcome with enthusiasm and without reservation neighbors of all races and ethnicities. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Middleton Mayor and Common Council as follows, that the Mayor and Common Council of the City of Middleton, Wisconsin, repudiate racist covenants that are remaining signs of embedded and systemic racism in our society. And, excuse me, and we further state our dedication to exposing and rooting out systemic racism wherever we find it. This resolution was adopted at a regular meeting of the Middleton Common Council on this 21st day of July, 2020.
Thank you, Alderman Nelson. Need a motion to approve?
I would make that motion, Susan.
This is Emily. I'll second.
Okay, motion by Susan and second by Emily. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Mayor, I'd like to make one request of the city.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
I want to thank Katie for this very thoughtful resolution and finding a solution to a difficult problem.
Yeah.
I would like to ask the city staff to actually send letters to everyone in this neighborhood and perhaps slightly surrounding it, so they're fully aware of what they can do.
Thank you, Susan. Now that should be okay, Mike, right?
I think we could probably do that.
Okay.
This is Katie. Susan, thank you for that. But this was Mike and I think Larry who wrote this lovely resolution.
It was your idea.
Thanks.
Yes, we are all together, so it all makes a difference. Yes. Well, okay, so the motion has been made, it has been seconded, and a great job, Mike, Larry, and Katie, and Lori did some work too. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are now on to item number 4. This is Resolution 2020-40, authorizing the reappropriation of 2019 capital project carryover funds for senior center HVAC replacement. So we have issues with HVAC at senior center and need a motion to approve.
This is Mark. I'll move approval as referred to by finance.
This is Kathy. I'll second that.
Motion by Mark and second by Kathy. Any questions or comments? We want to keep our seniors in good shape, so we got to do it. So all those in favor of this motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Now we are on to the approval of the consent agenda. It has 8 different items, and need a Mike. I don't need to read it, right?
No, you don't.
Okay,
I would like to point out, if I could point out one, Mayor, and that is that the school district has generously, again, allowed us the use of Cromery Middle School for the August 11th primary election, and our thanks to them. That's included in the consent agenda.
Yes. Thank you, God. Thank you, school district. Okay, need a motion to approve consent agenda.
Ramsey moves to approve consent agenda.
Robert seconds.
Okay, motion by Dan Ramsey and seconded by Robert. Any questions or comments or further comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to the old business, and we are on to item number 1. This is the school resource officer agreement with the school district, and there's a motion to reconsider. And this is the council members West and Sullivan.
I would move to reconsider the school resource officer agreement with the school district. And I want to make sure that they include having public comment before they send us a new contract.
This is Mark. I'll second that. Before you can put conditions on this, I think all you have to do, you're just trying to reconsider the contract.
That's correct. So
Okay.
I will change my motion just to reconsider.
Okay. So Larry, do we need to have a discussion on this one, or when there's a reconsider, just a straight vote?
Reconsideration motions do allow for discussion, but you don't have to have it.
Okay, anybody who has questions or comments?
This is Emily. Can you just go over the tactical? What are we voting on? Like, what's the phrase? Just reconsidering it? Yes, no, or?
Yes, this is Larry. The purpose of a motion for reconsideration by a third vote with the majority at the previous meeting would simply bring the topic back. It does not act to approve the contract. And in fact, there's an item on the agenda later which is old business number 4, which expressly deals with the fact that this is simply revives the topic, nothing more.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Any comments? Okay, so the motion has been made to reconsider the school resource officer agreement with the school district. And this is the motion to reconsider.
This is Robert. Hang on,
Okay,
sorry.
yes, Bob.
We can ask the school to do whatever we want to ask them, but I think we need to make it very clear that we can't enforce anything or drive them to do something. All we can do is say, if you want to talk about this further, we are telling you that you need to seek out community input from a variety of sources. Is that kind of a good overview of what we're talking about here?
Robert, that's the second stage. Right now, all we're trying to do is just bring it back to reconsider it. We will hear from both the school district and the police department, and then we will make another motion to ask to tell the school district we would be willing to consider a new contract. But this is not to consider the new contract.
That's item number 4, Robert and Susan. So, yes, Susan is absolutely right. Any other questions or comments? Any other questions or comments? Okay, the motion is to, this is the school resource officer agreement with the school district, and the motion is to reconsider. So all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so the motion to reconsider passes unanimously. Now we are on to item number 2. This is the presentation from Middleton High School Alumni Network. Now, this is 10 minutes, Mike, right? Or whatever. So, but
they estimated 10. They estimate 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, you think have it's time, whatever you need. So,
I think it's Gabrielle Hinahara and is it Heidi Ropa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Heidi Ropa. There she is.
Yes.
Okay, please identify yourself and you're up.
Good evening, Mayor Brar and members of the Middleton Common Council. My name is Heidi Ropa. I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to you today. I am a member of the school community partnership team, but I do not speak on behalf of the whole team. We have a group of 10 of us who have expressed some concerns about process. I'm also a Middleton parent. I'm a restorative justice practitioner with the Dane County Community Restorative Court and a prison volunteer. All of those lenses inform where I am on this issue today. Gabrielle and I come here to talk to you knowing there are deep relationships within police departments, schools, the village of Cross Plains, and the city of Middleton. I felt those relationships as I entered this virtual space tonight. Lots of familiar faces welcome each other. It's a great feeling of community. Many people in these relationships have felt uneasy about the questioning of the SRO agreements. This discussion is not about individuals in relationships, but about systems in which we are all operating. How might the discomfort that we're feeling become an opportunity for learning? Change is inevitably uncomfortable. It is not easy, but curiosity about our commonly held assumptions about safety in a predominantly white suburban school is a good place to start. I just want to define that the role of the community school partnership in the Middleton Cross Plains School District was to assist in making our schools a place where all students feel safe and welcomed. And that we must do that to work with the community to create understanding and have to affect positive change. The Alumni Network is working in collaboration with some of us on the community school partnership team. They've informed us, they've inspired us, they've led us. They're a gathering space for former students, parents, and staff. They bound together by their common experience within the district, and we are united in our desire to contribute toward the development of Middleton Cross Plains schools. We join in hopes of furthering and expanding the school's mission to inspire and empower all students through radical inclusivity, collaboration, and community. I'll go to the next slide.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabrielle Hinahara. I am a 2006 graduate of Middleton High School, and I've been the director of the Middleton Youth Center for about 6 years. Our main argument here tonight is that the school board must undertake a complete reevaluation of the SRO program. City Council must agree tonight to table renewal of the SRO contract from a process standpoint, regardless of personal opinion of the SRO model. City Council should vote against or table the newly amended SRO contract that the school board passed last night as well. This updated contract will come before you for a vote soon, likely at your next meeting. The amendment that was added last night does not do nearly enough to address our concerns, which we will get into in more detail in a moment. The school board was not transparent or inclusive throughout their decision-making process and did not conduct a review in order to make an informed decision. Their lack of transparency and inclusivity has continued, with last night's school board meeting being the latest example. I would like to remind you that tabling the contract tonight and rejecting the amended contract at a future meeting would require the district to prepare a new, improved proposal. It's not necessarily a rejection of the entire SRO model, but rather a request for a more transparent and inclusive process. An approval of the contract, even the amended contract, would not build in nearly enough accountability for the school board to improve their process moving forward. Next slide. The school board's initial decision to renew the SRO contract was made with little to no engagement with community, staff, or students. Members of the school community partnership team raised concerns about the SRO program in their meeting on July 9th, just 2 weeks before the school board meeting. The school board president and superintendent were both in attendance at this meeting and did not inform the team that the SRO decision was on the agenda for the upcoming school board meeting. At the 6:22 school board meeting itself, only 2 minutes of time was scheduled on the agenda for this discussion, and it wasn't even used. It seems that district staff were also not informed in advance. The school district social work team and West Middleton Elementary equity team both wrote letters of dissent after hearing about the school board's initial decision.
Staff, students, alumni, parents, and community members have voiced serious concerns about the SRO program. 11 members of the school community partnership team sent a letter to the school board several days after the SRO vote, requesting a community discussion that would center on the voices of students of color, especially alumni who'd expressed serious concerns about the current model. The entire school district social work team, 9 social workers, one of whom you've heard from this evening, Kristen Miller, who's been with the district for 23 years, wrote a letter to the school board and administration with several requests, including ending this SRO contract. The West Middleton Elementary Equity Team, the principal, the school social worker, family engagement specialist, and other staff wrote a separate letter requesting that the district reopen the conversation around police in schools before determining whether or not the contract will be renewed. None of these letters were referred to last night at the school board meeting. In addition, the Middleton High School Alumni Network wrote and has circulated a petition outlining changes for the school district to address systemic racism, which now has over 700 signatures. That also was not referred to last night at the school board meeting.
Yes, and it's important to note that multiple members of the Alumni Network wrote letters against the SRO contract for the July 13th school board meeting that were not read because the issue was on the agenda for the next meeting on the 20th. Additional letters, including one from Heidi and myself, were sent to the school board for last night's meeting. None of these letters were read by the school board. School board president Annette Ashley did not read the letters last night, quote, in the interest of time, although there was enough time during that same meeting for 5 different police officers to speak. At this point, there are now 3 rounds of letters from the community speaking against the SRO contract that have never been read at a school board meeting. None of these groups have been invited to speak, and recent school board meetings have had no opportunity for public comment. This all demonstrates a continued and concerning lack of transparency by our school board.
I think, yeah, to go back to this one, SRO funding must be considered within the context of recent cuts made in the school system. In total, SRO program costs in the district are roughly $127,000 per year and roughly $260,000 total when the City of Middleton and Village of Cross Plains funds are included. This year, the school district made multiple cuts to programs and staff in areas that directly impact student behavior, safety, and support. The district cut 1 FTE social work position, leaving 3 district elementary schools with no social worker. The district decided not to fill a newly created social emotion learning coach, which was created to support elementary schools in integrating SEL into their classrooms. Third, the 3-year restorative justice pilot program at Cromrie was put on hold, and the district position supporting the program was dissolved, even though the core team had already completed the 3 trainings and now has no district support or funding to continue the work. I might add that all of these approaches are proactive rather than punitive and responsive. So that raised our concern.
Next slide. So what really makes our schools safe? With the cuts just clarified to social work, staff, SEL, and restorative justice, we must ask, on whose safety and well-being are we centering our policies? What unexamined assumptions about students of color lie underneath the decision to place an officer in the building in the first place? If SROs are placed in our schools to develop positive connections with students, why are they vested in carrying a gun? In the context of a skewed power dynamic, is this conducive to true relationship building? What message does it send to students of color that their behaviors require a response from someone with a vest and a gun? What happens to their spirits as this message is internalized? Why are SROs asked to perform the function of classroom teacher, counselor, and security at MHS and at the middle schools? This seems like a lot to ask of a police officer. Is this the best use of public funds to support students in their development as adolescents?
We're asking for a robust review and a community engagement process. Given the wide opportunity gaps present in our school system, the inequities within the Middleton Police Department, which we've heard about tonight, and the current political debate, it's unacceptable that the school board did not make a greater effort to include staff, students, and community in the decision to renew the contract. The school board and the Middleton Police Department should conduct a robust review of the SRO program and present the findings to the community. The review should include both qualitative and quantitative data, gathering the experiences from staff, students, parents, and alumni, with a particular focus on centering on voices of and experiences of students of color. Staff, students, alumni, and community should be invited to participate in at least one public forum on the topic. And the community school partnership team should be involved in the review of the SRO program. This should all happen before SROs return into the learning environment. Next slide, please.
In conclusion, the onus should be on the MCP-ASD Board of Education to undertake a complete reevaluation of the SRO program that is open to community engagement and input. Therefore, City Council must vote to table renewal of the SRO contract from a process standpoint and from a commitment to community engagement, regardless of personal opinion of the SRO model. As Dana shared at last night's school board meeting, the SRO program has never been formally evaluated. Last night, the school board reapproved the SRO contract, adding an amendment that the program will be reevaluated annually. Unfortunately, the language of the amendment is extremely vague and does not guarantee any parent, student, or community engagement in the process. We suggest that all of the bullets in our previous slide must be added before City Council would even consider approving this new contract. Furthermore, since school will be 100% virtual for first quarter, we would encourage the school board to conduct a 3-month inclusive review of the SRO program beginning in August and not consider renewing the SRO program until after that review has been completed. Thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you, Heidi, and thank you, Gabrielle. And now we have the next presentation about the school resource officer agreement presentation is Chief Helen Brand and District Superintendent Dr. Dana Manogue.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll try sharing my screen. Mayor, can you see that?
Yep.
Thank you. Good evening, and thanks for allowing myself and members of the Middleton Police Department and Middleton Cross Plains Area School District the opportunity to speak in front of all of you this evening. As the topic of our local school resource officer program has been of much debate within our community within the past couple of weeks, we felt it was pertinent to take some time this evening to provide all of you with some history regarding our SRO program in Middleton and the future direction of the program moving forward. I want to emphasize that the police department and school district are committed to listening to all members of our community and soliciting feedback on the Middleton SRO program and making any changes where needed. An evaluation tool has been developed and meetings are being planned with the goal of bringing forth a report to members of this council and the school board in January of 2021. To get started this evening, get to the next slide. I'd like to take a moment to introduce members of the police department and school district who will be presenting. I am Troy Hellenbrand, the current chief of the Middleton Police Department. You'll also be hearing from our current SROs, Kenneth Chung, who is at the Middleton High School, and Julie Carbon, who is our current SRO at Crombie Middle School. Additionally, former SRO and now Sergeant Tyler Lather, along with former Chief Chuck Falk, will be also taking a few minutes to talk about our local program. From the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District, we have Percy Brown, the Director of Equity and Student Achievement, Barb Buffington, the Director of Student Services, Jim Blodgett, the Director of Technology, and Superintendent Dana Minogue. The presentation this evening will include the history of the SRO program here in Middleton, a summary of the current state of the model and feedback which we have received from the community members, and the future direction of the program. Lastly, after we have concluded our presentation, we'd be happy to answer any questions from members of the City Council. I'll now turn it over to Percy Brown to get us started this evening.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. To the mayor, common council, thank you for creating the space and the time to continue such a courageous conversation. To the staff in the district and the families who have taken a position to bring awareness around systemic racism and having the willingness to play their part to dismantle those things within our district in order to create conditions for us to do our best work and to ensure that all of our kids, regardless of those predictable outcomes like race, socioeconomic status, ability status, are moving us in a direction towards truly serving all. I'll be honest with you, I am somewhat in a peculiar place this evening. There's been so much going on globally in our nation and right here at home around issues of racial injustice. And as a man of dark hue, I find myself in a complicated position. I was born and raised in Madison, Wisconsin, and because of my upbringing and my somewhat success, I am identified as a leader in the Black community. I'm also the Director of Equity and Student Achievement for the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District, and that affords me another hat of leadership. And to be in that place, I find myself oftentimes coming into conflict. And that's just what naturally happens when you are living in a society that has discriminated against you and your people for over 400 years. And while the door has opened and has afforded me this opportunity, that is why this space is so peculiar for me. But before I share what I would like to offer before my colleagues and the police officers of Middleton hear their perspectives, I've got to acknowledge the former graduates of Middleton High School. Elise, who graduated in 2013. I was only there with you for a year and I didn't have the fortune of getting to know you, but I just want to thank you and appreciate you for your time and your willingness to come back to engage in your community in which you grew up in this fight for racial justice. Margot Sorensen, it's been a while that I've seen you. It's really good to hear your voice. And I think that you escaped dealing with consequences of the trouble that you got in, because I think I was your dean and I let you off the hook a few times, just to try to be funny there. To Tim O'Shea, Akash, Lauren, Hannah, Stephen, and Peter. I know that I had personal relationships with you all in the district. We worked together to cultivate your voice and to help build your student activism, which is carried into your adult life and your respective where you are right now. And I cannot thank you enough for giving of your time as you did in high school to come back and to do whatever you can to hold the system accountable, but also play your part to help us move forward in this fight for social justice or racial justice And for that, I thank you, because I think it speaks to the power of the school district and things that I think that we've done to help prepare you become who you are today. And to see it come back is a special thing. But it does hurt because you are placing an indictment on the district, and you've got research and data to support that. So I feel that pain as someone who works in the district, but I am sitting in that pain and I am hearing you loud and clear. I don't come this evening offering a particular position, because in this fight for racial justice, it's a war, and this is just one battle of many. We have a district where only 30% of our Black students are reading proficiently, and I find that I find that in the same place in terms of our sense of urgency to do what we need to do, because if only 7 out of 10 of our students of color or Black students are not able to read, they're going to find themselves in the criminal justice system anyway. So I think that argument has to have equal weight, if not more, in our fight for racial justice. But your arguments and your claims are justified, and I just want you all to know that. But in this process, regardless of how it shakes out within the context of time and what the board will decide moving forward and what the Common Council will decide moving forward, I just want to offer to all parties a path moving forward. And the path that I will offer comes from Dr. King and his writings around this idea of the beloved community. And Dr. King believed that it required 6 steps of social change in order for this nation to truly be that beloved community that he talked about. And those 6 stages of social change are in order. And the first one is information gathering. The second one is education on the information. The third one is commitment, and I would say personal and organizational commitment. The next step, courageous and deep, authentic discussion and negotiation, which is followed by direct action. And then we close the process with reconciliation. And I think that these 6 steps are important because there is a lot of passion on both sides. I do believe that while we may differ in terms of what we think needs to move forward, I think there are processes that do need to happen. And I offer these 6 steps in order for us to get there. I think we've done some work around information gathering. I want to acknowledge the students for giving of their time again to gather that data. I think the education has been somewhat ongoing. Our commitment, I see that from our community. I know that there's been commitment within the district because I've been leading this work now for 8 years and I'm in year 9. And I can literally look around, look behind me and point to tremendous successes in terms of the things that we've done to truly create equitable outcomes for all students. Discussion and negotiation is in the place that we're in right now. It's difficult, but I think with those first 4, we're still kind of circling. But I hope that moving forward that we can come to a place where we can find common ground as a broader community and move forward with some direct action. And while, some folks on both sides may feel like they didn't get what they wanted in the end, I hope that we all can engage in reconciliation moving forward. So information gathering, education, commitment, discussion/negotiation, direct action, and reconciliation. That's what I leave you with this evening. This work is hard. And as you continue to move forward in this work, to the Common Council, to the school board, to the families and the former students, as you move forward, I also offer and ask that you consider unintended consequences of the actions and the decisions that will happen moving forward. And regardless of the outcome, I do believe that there's this thing called white backlash. And I've always been strategic and methodical to keep that front and center in all of the things that we've done in Middleton. It's a real thing, whether people understand it or not. And I hope that regardless of the outcome, it will tick some people off and there will be some form of backlash. So I hope that we have the thick skin and the courage to stand up to that backlash and not fold to the backlash. So I leave you all with that, and I will now pass it over to, I think, Jim or whoever has the next slide. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Percy. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Percy. I'm Jim Blodgett. I'm the Director of Technology Services. I also sit on the District Safety Leadership Team with Barb Buffington, the Director of Student Services, and Dean Paskey, the Facilities Manager. Barb could not be here tonight, so she asked me to take her slide. I will do my best. This year, we had the opportunity to restructure our student services staffing. With the boundary changes and budget constraints, the Pope Farm Elementary opening up this fall, we had to restructure student services staff, and in doing so, we had the opportunity to create full-time student services positions at some elementary schools, as most of our school social workers and school psychologists share multiple schools. These shifts did decrease our social workers, but we did increase our school psychologists. We now have 2.0 FTE at each one of our schools all day long. We wish we could increase our school's social worker staffing, but unfortunately, we're not able to do so this coming year. We always review our staffing each year and hope to increase student services staffing when the need and the budget allows. In addition to that, we've worked to increase our training on restorative practices. We've shifted our focus to social emotional learning in the classroom, where the teachers now will be taking the lead on social emotional learning instead of the counselor. We've increased the school-based mental health services through more student services staff in each building. We've shifted our model to the state threat assessments. We've created student crisis response guides that help us in times of safety or tragedy to give us an alignment and help us work through that process without having to do it on the fly. And of course, we have an anonymous reporting tool that is staffed 24/7 by 365. Thank you. Troy, are you next?
Thank you, Jim.
It's actually Chief Falk.
Oh, sorry, Chief Falk.
Yep. Hi, friends. Boy, it's nice to see you. Although I never imagined I would be participating in a city council Zoom meeting. Truth be told, when I retired 6 months ago, I had never heard of Zoom, but here I am speaking tonight on it. I'm speaking tonight. Pardon me?
Quick learner.
I'm speaking tonight in a program that I truly believe in, and that is in support of the school resource program. Just to give you a little background, the Middleton Police Department and the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District have a long history of collaborative working relationships. In the early 1980s, the police department assigned a juvenile officer to work with school district administrators. In 1984, I was the first school resource officer. I split my time between Crombie Middle School, the high school, and our elementary schools. The program has evolved over the years. For instance, the program was originally called Police School Liaison Program, and I was a Police School Liaison Officer. I was in plain clothes, and I never dreamed that I would be part of a team planning on the response in the aftermath of an active shooter in a school setting. Nevertheless, while there have been adjustments over the years, the goals and philosophy of the program have remained remarkably unchanged between 1984 and 2020. I call your attention to the slide that is being shown now, which outlines those philosophies. I'd like to briefly address two issues that I hear as justification for removing police from the schools. The first being that police in the schools arrest numerous students, disproportionately students of color, which leads to the school to prison pipeline phenomena. While that is an issue in some districts and with some police departments, I submit to you that it is not an issue here. Simply put, the number of students physically arrested and taken into custody occur on rare occasions. SROs do not enforce school rules. They are only involved in serious issues, and their goal is not to arrest, but it is to prevent and divert. There are procedures in place to include district staff, support staff, and administrators, as well as the SRO and police supervisors before a physical arrest would ever be made. There are safeguards in place to make sure that if an arrest is contemplated, that they are infrequent, justified, and scrutinized. I would challenge anyone to show that one of those infrequent physical arrests in the school setting was not justified. I say that with confidence because when I was chief, I reviewed every physical arrest in the school setting, and I was comfortable that school staff, support staff, administrators, police officers, and police supervisors acted appropriately, and a physical arrest was the last resort. Again, this may be an issue in other locations, but we need to look at what's happening in Middleton and what's happening in Middleton now. The second justification I hear for removing police from schools is that students who have had a negative experience with the police will be triggered when seeing an officer in school, and that they will not feel comfortable or safe in the school setting. This is very difficult to quantify, as are many of the issues in the SRO debate. As for the triggering issue, I feel seeing police in schools in non-confrontational, normalized day-to-day encounters removes that fear, that stigma that people may have when seeing an officer. Take members of our immigrant community, for example, specifically undocumented immigrants. Undocumented immigrants have a fear of the police. They often do not realize that local police do not enforce federal immigration laws, and they are fearful that if they have contact with local police, they will be deported. Therefore, they are afraid to contact the police, even if they are the victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, sexual exploitation, or any other crime. When undocumented immigrant parents and their children see officers in schools and realize that they are not enforcing federal immigration laws, that they are treated in the same manner as all citizens, they will eventually become used to the police and not be afraid to seek assistance. This is but one example of how students, their parents, school staff, and members of the community develop positive relationships with the police because of their presence in the school. Believe me, I am not an apologist for the police. When the police violate the public trust, they need to be held accountable. The relationship between the police department, the school district, and the school resource officer program in Middleton is not broken. It has not violated the public trust. As a matter of fact, it has brought the police department and community closer together over the years. It is a very good idea to frequently review the program and to make changes, but there is no need to eliminate a 35-year successful program because of what has happened in other cities. I also want to be on the right side of history on this issue, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Please agree to this contract. The school district has agreed to do a deep dive into the program. I trust they will do a thorough, inclusive job. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, who's next?
Sorry, Mayor, I was trying to get my mute
Okay.
off. I apologize.
Thank you, Chief.
As you just heard from retired Chief Chuck Ball, the Middleton Police Department and the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District have had a long and successful relationship for the past 35 years. Over these years, the School Resource Officer Program has evolved. However, the main goal of this program has always been about building strong and meaningful relationships with students and staff, and in an environment that they feel comfortable in. In addition to the main goal of relationship building, our school resource officers are also role models, mentors, teachers, coaches, and a resource for every student and staff member in the building in which we have an SRO. Before and during an SRO's 3-year assignment, they received numerous hours of specialized training geared towards this community policing assignment in the GOALS program. The positive impact of our school resource officer program can be seen in the strong bond that many former students and SROs have developed, and one which stays well after an officer has left the SRO position. It has been 20 years since I completed my SRO assignment at the Middleton High School, and to this day I still get phone calls from former students who are seeking legal advice or who just want to fill me in on their life or what is going on. These relationships were built solely upon my interactions with these former students as their school resource officer, and every former Middleton SRO can share very similar stories. I've heard the statement that a school resource officer has never stopped an active shooter or a threat in a school environment. This is a hard thing to measure, as no one can tell us how many violent incidents were prevented based on information that came to the attention of an SRO, which was acted upon and resolved before a situation escalated to where violence occurred. Additionally, there were 2 cases in our state alone last year where SROs were directly involved in a violent encounter with students intent on harming themselves or fellow classmates. Time is critical in these situations, as we saw in 2018 when our 2 Middleton SROs, within seconds of hearing the active shooter in our very own city, alerted school staff to make sure our schools were locked down and our students were safe within minutes. Were safe minutes before others in our community were even aware of this active situation. Lastly, as you'll see in the next slide, this long-standing relationship between the police department and school district is a result of a lot of collaborative efforts on the part of both organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So I'm not just the tech guy. I also, as I said before, sit on the district safety leadership team with Barb Buffington and Dean Paskey. Part of the reason for that is that the technology team is responsible for the building access, surveillance, and automated crisis systems. I'm also responsible for coordinating the staff crisis response and safety training. And 2 years ago, we won almost $700,000 in safety grants from the state. And a major part of my job right now is getting those grants finished and getting all the work completed so that we can harden our buildings to the level that we wanted to initially, but didn't have the money. Finally, I'm the logistics chief when we have a large district crisis, and I sit on the emergency operations team to help put resources where they're needed when they're needed. Much of what we do as far as safety is influenced by our collaboration with the Middleton PD. They provide 3 to 4 people for each of our district safety planning meetings, which occur 3 to 5 times a year, depending on the year. They support our equity initiatives and they participate in our equity trainings. They also help us with developing our school response team training and implementing that. For the last 2 years, I've been directly responsible for the school staff safety, security, and active threat training, and have received considerable consultation and input and truly wisdom from our SROs and other police officers during that. We also, during those trainings, worked with our student services staff, psychologists, counselors, and social workers to make sure that our trainings were trauma sensitive and took into account the equity initiatives of our district. Our SROs provide classroom lessons on safety, protective behaviors both online and in person, and bullying prevention. They also provide us with a thought partner when we are starting a construction project, helping us design buildings that are not just wonderful education institutions and facilities, but are also designed to protect our students and staff in the case of an emergency or crisis. In addition, we've undertaken, while I've been in the district 8 years, 2 full-scale exercises. These include the initial planning, the grant writing, tabletops, functional exercises, and finally full-scale exercises. First one was with a bus crash, and the second one was with an active shooter incident that we used the high school for our simulation. 2 years ago, Chuck Falk brought a company to Middleton to talk to law enforcement and included the school district because the company provides a high density, high resolution, information dense mapping system that's also gridded to improve communication. We have since undertaken that process with all of our buildings. And so we are able to provide all of our law enforcement agencies, not just Middleton Police, with very accurate maps of our buildings that includes all the information that they will need to respond to a crisis. As I said before, we also have undertaken a large building access project literally 7 years ago. Because we knew that getting into our buildings can be difficult, and most of our buildings are large and have lots of doors, we didn't want police officers to have to find a key to get to our buildings or to get to where they needed to be. And so we put in a badging system that allows our police officers to come in the door that's closest to the incident and save valuable time. Finally, they've acted as our, say, wingman or big brother in coordinating with other agencies. You may not be aware, but we actually have 4 law enforcement agencies that we work with. We have 8 municipalities, and we have literally almost a half a dozen fire and EMS stations that respond to our buildings. The Middleton Police Department provides us with the tools that we need to interact with those other entities, and they were instrumental in getting us the ability to automate our crisis response, especially the ability to make an automated 911, which up to the point where we did it in 2014 had never been done in Dane County by a school district. Obviously, the banks and other places had automated 911, but the Middleton PD was willing to take that on as a project and helped us navigate through the county safety system to allow us to be able to do that across our district. Finally, and most importantly, they're our partner when we have a crisis or some sort of active threat. Having an SRO in our buildings, especially the high school, but also Cromrie, where they're very large, very complex, difficult to navigate, makes a huge difference in how quickly we can resolve a crisis. Having the ear of the dispatcher rather than trying to do it through a telephone or one of our district radios, which would be nearly impossible, and obviously we would not do a great job because that's not something that's really a role of any of our normal staff, but it's something that the SRO does pretty much every day, all day long, and is very, very good at that communication. Having them available to us at a moment's notice, literally a millisecond's notice, makes us much more capable of handling a crisis or a threat quickly, efficiently, and I would say makes everyone much safer within our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. So Chief, who is next?
Good evening. My name is Dana Minogan. I serve as the superintendent in the Milton Cross Plains area school system. I just want to take just a moment and recognize the feedback that we have been receiving on this topic over the past several weeks. And much of this has been touched on from people who spoke in public comment to the information that has been shared with you. And I think what we want to convey right now is that we believe these concerns and questions are real. We believe that the stories, the narratives, the experiences that we're hearing from our alumni, from our current students are real, and that they do deserve a thorough investigation and evaluation. We are very committed to that, and we know that in order to do that well, it's going to take us some time. We've heard from many of the alumni that have spoken here this evening, and from Heidi and from Gabrielle in their thoughtful presentation, that it's going to be important for us as we head into the evaluation that we truly engage our communities of color, that we listen to our staff of color, students of color, and our families of color. And community forums, that certainly is something that we can do a better job of. Community engagement, we can do a much better job of. That criticism is correct, and we hear that feedback. But we're also going to need to develop other mechanisms where we are able to create brave spaces for these conversations to happen and where people can speak their truth. So these are just a few of the topics that have come to our attention from people who are both in support of police in schools and in opposition to police in schools. I'm thankful that our colleagues in the police department and that there are so many community members that are interested who want to continue to delve into this discussion. We do have a wonderful group of people who've come together in our school community partnership group who are very invested and passionate about this issue, and we will continue to look to them as well to help us as we build our evaluation process that will happen over the course of the next several months.
Thank you, Dana.
All right, I'm Sergeant Tyler Lather with the Middleton Police Department. I have about 10 years of law enforcement experience, and I served as the SRO at Middleton High School recently from 2017 to 2019. I want to thank everyone tonight for taking some time to listen to current and former SROs to better understand our role, what we do, and why we do it. I support giving everyone a voice in this process, especially our students. I firmly believe that a rush to abolish our SROs in a short period of time over summer break is also going to silence voices in this process. Removing SROs without an alternative plan in place and ready to implement is also reckless from a safety standpoint. In Middleton, removal of our SROs would be detrimental to the support and quality of police support our students receive, particularly students of color who are already at a disadvantage when they step into our schools. Our SRO process in Middleton is carefully designed. SROs are carefully selected, they interview, they do a presentation, and that's done in collaboration with both the police department and the school district. They receive a plethora of specialized training well above and beyond what patrol staff receives. Let's also remember that the Middleton High School has over 2,100 students. With the renovation, it will be approaching 3,000 students and be the largest high school in the state. A traditional response is not going to be an adequate level of service compared to what has been received and students can receive now. Some of that training that our SROs receive is specific to mental health, adolescent brain, implicit bias, equity training, including training through the school district, and NVCI or nonviolent crisis intervention training. SROs in Middleton are not and should never be used as a means of first resort. SROs are first and foremost a role model, a counselor, and a mentor for students. Arrests and citations are used as a last resort. Oftentimes, they are called for and actually begged for by parents or even support staff of the school because other means have been exhausted. The other counseling and social work or psychological services have not worked, and things are at a crisis point. When those interventions are put in place with juveniles, the rehabilitative focus is always what we put our emphasis on. We support restorative practices in our schools. When I was the SRO, we did some work to help try to establish a youth court option for the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District. Unfortunately, once it came time for some hard work and implementation and funding, that's where that initiative fell short. I think that's something that's worth another look as well, in addition to the SRO program. The relationship that our students have with SROs is critical. And to be honest, some of the students that I developed strongest relationships with were those that were subject to arrest or citation or discipline through the school process. I was able to take the time as an SRO to get to know those students, know the stressors that were going on, help them through their struggles. A traditional police officer is going to see that student, make the arrest or citation, and move on. We have an entire city to serve. An SRO is going to see that student the very next morning. They're going to offer additional supports, and they're going to support that student through the process and build them up and establish that relationship. Removing our SROs furthers that divide in the police in our community. It furthers the mistrust, and it's going to further expand those stigmas toward students that may already have that toward a uniformed police officer. Specifically for mental health, our SROs have a chance to get to know our vulnerable students, our students with special needs, many of whom may have behavior plans or IEPs. SROs are able to proactively get to know those students, become familiar with those plans, and know what might escalate a student, so we know what to avoid and know what to do to de-escalate a student. We have an immediate response to that situation, so we can direct emergency medical services, EMS, into where they need to be quickly and efficiently, much more quickly than we could do if we were not already in the building. This actually happens semi-frequently at Middleton High School, and as it continues to grow, those issues will continue to happen. I also want to speak to our mandatory reporting situation and sexual assaults. Because of the number of students at Middleton High School, this is a frequent area where I spent my time as an SRO. The reporting environment where students feel safe at school. They have their friends with them. They have support staff. Sometimes the SRO themselves is the person that the student will report directly to. Having an SRO on staff in the building facilitates that process. It has a trauma-informed care. We're able to work with the social workers, the counselors, so that we're familiar with their processes, they're familiar with ours, and that provides a high level of victim service, including timely and detailed investigations. I also want to reference a few studies that are out there. There's a lot of research on SROs, and I know some are going to be referenced by those in opposition, but I want to point out there's also research that actually supports SROs being in schools. A study by the University of Tennessee examined schools both with and without SRO programs, both before and after they were implemented in schools that now have them. Their findings showed that schools with SROs actually experienced fewer arrests for serious crimes, such as assault and weapons charges. They found SROs were more likely to downgrade the severity of charges than patrol officers. They're more likely to divert students away from the criminal justice system, which is very much a shared goal that both sides of this debate on SROs have. A 2016 study by researchers at Mississippi State found that SROs were more lenient than patrol officers when accounting misdemeanor and status offenses. Dr. Richard Johnson, who has a background in criminology, psychology, teaching, and criminal justice, summarized the current state of research on SROs. He found that current studies do not indicate the prevalent presence that SROs create a school-to-prison pipeline. He found that there's no empirical evidence to suggest that SROs criminalize minor behavior by students. He also find SROs actually create opportunities for school-age children to have non-confrontational, non-enforcement contacts with law enforcement that may contribute to the positive opinions of police later in life. I do believe a rush to abolish our SROs is creating change for the sake of change, and it is going to have some unintended consequences. Instead, let's continue to build on the collaboration we have. Let's evaluate the process and take time to allow everyone to have a voice at that table. I want to quickly acknowledge active shooters, as they have been brought up multiple times, and many have said that SROs make no difference in this area. It'd be foolish not to acknowledge the Paradigm active shooter incident. I realize that that did not happen within a school, but I want to point out that the day that that happened, I was on duty in my office inside Middleton High School as the SRO when that incident, horrible incident, happened. The first thing I was able to do as I leapt from my chair and ran out the front door on my school radio was immediately alert district administration, school and district-wide, to place all of our schools in our district on an immediate lockdown to keep all of our students safe. I was part of an initial team that rushed into the building and confronted and stopped the shooter. Had an SRO program not been in place that day, we would have not had extra dedicated officers in those schools able to respond to that incident while also ensuring the safety of our students. The partnership, trust, and relationship building by Middleton SROs strengthens our schools and our community. Thank you.
Thank you,
Point of order, this presentation's gone on for about 3 times as long as the previous one. Are we going to let the cops talk forever, or can we wrap this up soon? Thanks.
Okay, who is next? And let us.
My name is.
Okay, who is this?
My name is Kenneth Chung, and I'm the current SRO for Middleton High School.
Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to address a couple comments that were made earlier during the comment period by some of the students. We're not all white SROs. Last time I checked, I'm a person of color. A minority that's working as an SRO. And I'm glad they came. I'm glad they had time to speak about their concerns on behalf of our high-risk youth. But I also find that a little bit ironic because the 6 to 7 months that I was at the school, spending time rapping, freestyling in the office, walking the hallways with these high-risk youth from Moraine View, which is a apartment complex street community in West Madison. I have never seen any college-bound AP class present student with any of our high-risk youth. I mean, that's typically why they're relegated to the front of the building on their own in groups, because they're uncomfortable in Middleton High School, or they're in my office spending time because of their discomfort. I mean, the policy rationale behind having busing, allowing busing and busing people from certain neighborhoods into better school districts, in addition to Mitchell-Lama buildings, which are mixed-use apartment complexes, is to get these high-risk youth around model students that are college-bound and have a lot of positive values to share with these other students. That system, that policy system doesn't work if we don't have things in place in the high school to get these students to interact. So while it's great that these students are speaking on behalf of the high-risk youth that they're trying to protect, I find it ironic that these high-risk youth come to my office to talk about how uncomfortable they are around these college-bound students, like the ones that are speaking on their behalf. Eliminating the SRO is proposing a localized option to a larger system-wide problem. Why are the high-risk students at Middleton High School reading at a 4th grade level? I mean, that's a clear product of a systemic issue, a system that continues to push students through the public school system without the hard skills to survive post-high school. Why haven't people addressed this in a meaningful way? And who is responsible when there are kids bused from West Madison from Moraine View with a 4th grade reading level? I mean, let's seriously think about that. These kids come from Moraine View, to one of the wealthiest cities in Wisconsin, and at one of the best public schools in Wisconsin with a 4th grade reading level, and they're asked to perform. And we're addressing a systemic issue by getting rid of a school resource officer. And what happens when they don't? What happens when they don't perform? Previous administrations allowed them to roam the hallway or play with fidget toys, I don't know, in a classroom or in a private room. That isn't engaging high-risk youth. That's not putting them in an academic institution, academic setting that allows them and gives them the tools to be successful. That is not equitable education. That's not equity. When I started as the SRO, the status quo was ill-equipped to care for these students. Why were these students left in the hallways to roam and in the offices with fidget toys until the new administration and I stepped in? We, the police, aren't the root cause of this systemic issue. Removing the SRO from Middleton High School will not address the fundamental issues affecting our students of color. In the 2009-2020 academic year, we were fortunate to have a new superintendent in Dana, Peg's leadership, new principals, and passionate deans. Our goal is to get students back in the classroom, and we did that, and we did what previous administrations weren't able to do, and we were able to get students out of the hallways and into an area of academic instruction. And that was a challenge, and we were able to do that because we were passionate and collaborative and working together to find the best options and resources for these students. And you know what? The Middleton School Resource Officer, had a huge, significant role in this process. I got social workers from Dane County Human Services taking interest in the issues at Middleton High School. We were in the process of establishing a restorative court and introducing personnel from Dane County's gang prevention program called GRIT until this pandemic. I talked to the juvenile judge, Everett Mitchell, to determine the best way to maximize resources for our high-risk youth. I spent every lunch ensuring that our youth weren't alone and alienated. I deconstructed Tupac's song in 2 AP poetry classes to give college-bound youth that don't spend a lot of time around these issues a glimpse of social and racial issues and minority plight. These examples are only a short list of the work that I did and previous SROs like Sergeant Lather have done to make MHS a more palatable, and yes, I use palatable intentionally, environment for a high-risk youth coming from Moraine View and coming from West Madison. Now, I'm sorry, I hope this doesn't come off as a polemic, but my goal here is to urge everyone to take the time to not use ad hominem attacks and arguments, and not to be emotional, but to be well-reasoned, and to take time to think about this and think about what's best for our community and collectively fight the systemic issues that have shackled our brothers and sisters of color from meaningful progress. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Kenneth.
I come here before you as a City of Middleton police officer with a position as a school resource officer at Cromrie Middle School. As I listened in to the July 7th City Council meeting, I was disheartened to hear the decision was made to reject the contract between the between Middleton Cross Plains Area School District and the City of Middleton. I'm here tonight to share with you all my experience as an SRO and how vital of a team member we are in the school community. I want to start by thanking everyone for their input on the topic of SROs in this school district. I want you to know that I hear you. I agree this program should be evaluated regularly. The police department has been participating in the School and Community Partnership Committee to do just that, evaluate our current SRO model and seek further development. My family and I recently moved into the school district as my son will be entering kindergarten. We know how great the school district is as a direct impact of the SROs. I myself have been an SRO for 1.5 years, and I truly believe a lot has been accomplished in that time. When my son was 1 year old, I decided to apply for the SRO position. I wanted to share the love I had for my child with other children. What I did not know were the deep connections I would make with students, staff, and parents. I have had students come to my office to take a break, to vent their frustrations, to report various things from stolen items, to concerning words another student made, and I have had students who simply want to say hi. I have taken phone calls from parents who are upset, from parents who are thankful, from parents who are frustrated with the system. I have sat, listened, and shared tears with a mother. Every conversation has meaning to me and has impacted me in my position as an SRO. I have built great relationships with the students. We play cards, we talk at lunch, we laugh together, we listen to one another, we learn from each other, we grow together. They learn to interact with me in uniform and with me in plain clothes. They see me as a human, and I see them as another child of mine. Prior to the country's acknowledgement of systemic racism and social injustice, and prior to the global pandemic, I did not realize how valuable my position in the school truly is. Not only do I teach the students about gang resistance and avoiding drugs, the children teach me understanding and forgiveness. They also share with me life lessons I have never had to have, nor will my son. But now I can share with him these valuable lessons to teach him empathy and compassion. After 40 hours of specialized training to work in a school environment, I went to additional training for adolescent mental health. On top of this, we attend yearly juvenile justice trainings, statewide school resource officer trainings, and Department of Justice Office of School Safety trainings. These trainings have made me an asset to the school in my response to these incidents and to be proactive in my position. I am not just a patrol officer with no background about school policies or how each student reacts, escalates, or de-escalates. I know how the school administration works with the students. I am aware of individual students' plans if they are a safety concern. I know family history, recent community incidents, and resources for the student and family. The popular term associated with SROs in the school is the school to prison pipeline. My goal is never to punish, but to teach and redirect through conversation and connecting with home or other supports. I have worked closely with school psychologists, social workers, counselors, campus support, deans of students, and the assistant principal to develop plans for students to investigate school threats, ensure school safety, all while working in the best interest of the students, staff, and families. My job as an SRO is to ensure safety for all. You can find me near the front doors welcoming the students in daily. I am also outside at the end of the day helping direct bus and vehicle traffic along with saying goodbye to our students. In between those hours, I am walking the hallways, teaching classes, responding to physical fights, investigating thefts, monitoring school cameras, assisting administration with incidents regarding students, and listening to the school radio for pertinent information. Sometimes these incidents start at the school, or sometimes they start in the community, but have an impact on the school community. I work to bridge this gap. The relationship between the school district and the SROs is immeasurable and highly sought after by other municipalities. I want my children to flourish in a safe school environment. Situations can be quickly and efficiently handled inside the school with a well-equipped and trained officer stationed there. Without an officer present, you are increasing response time to immediate situations with our most vulnerable population. Children's lives will depend on this decision. The program has been in effect for decades, in which students are taught, counseled, and mentored by these officers, and has a lasting impact on their lives. Again, I am dedicated and committed to working with you all to continue our partnership and collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So Chief, what's next?
I've got one more slide. If you want to go ahead and put that up, yeah. So as mentioned earlier, our SRO program, our model, has never been formally evaluated since its inception. And we are very steadfastly committed to doing just that. I mentioned before that we really need to be thinking thoughtfully about how we are going to engage our students, families, and staff. And we will work to gather input with respect to how to best do that. Officer Chung is correct. We have a lot of work to do as a district when it comes to student achievement, when it comes to opportunity, when it comes to expectations of all of our students. And this is one, aspect of the work that we're all engaged in. I met recently with leaders from Middleton Police Department, the Village of Cross Plains Police Department, our school board president, and all of our secondary principals. We put together a comprehensive evaluation plan that will commence here right away and will result then in some recommendations coming before all the bodies involved in January of 2021 with respect to how we want to move forward. What will be important in that is not just hearing from folks, hearing from people about their experiences, their perceptions, their opinions, but we also want to study research. Some of that was cited tonight. We want to make sure we're doing a thorough review of peer-reviewed research on the impact of police in schools. Others have also offered some model alternatives. So some systems that maybe have moved away from an SRO model in favor of something else. We want to understand what those are to determine what might work here or not work here. All of this is going to take some time, which is really what we're asking for. We know that the school year is going to be different. We are starting virtually. We hope to transition to some type of face-to-face as soon as possible. And that will still afford us some time to work with all the parties who are really passionately expressing that they want to be involved here in this evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
This is Gabrielle Hanahara from the previous presentation. I just do want to state that we were told that our presentation should be limited to 10 to 15 minutes and that the same was expected for the district's presentation. And Heidi and I respected this guideline, and the district just presented for over 15 minutes. So we limited our presentation to 2 speakers and a very focused message due to these time constraints, but we could have included many additional data points, anecdotes, and a larger group of speakers from the alumni group and the school community partnership team. So I just wanted to say I hope that you're all noticing the inequities that are present even within this meeting here tonight.
Thank you, Gabrielle. I did not.
This is Robert, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
Robert.
I will say that I'm the one who recommended that they maintain a 10 to 15 minute presentation. I know that nobody else from the city told them they had to. That came from me, and my apologies for advising them in error. I guess I would have to say. I do think that both sides have presented their cases well. I think more conversation is needed on this, but if anyone's to blame for the disparity between the lengths of the presentation, I will take that upon my shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Well, we could also, if there's anyone who thinks they want to make a quick comment, so we don't have any problem. So, Larry, what's the next step?
Percy Brown, Mayor Percy Brown has his hand up.
Percy?
No, I just would like to thank Gabrielle for bringing that into the space. I think this is worthy of an ongoing conversation to ensure that we're transparent in communication so that we do our best to level the playing field. We have to offer that to our community. And it is playing out on more than one occasion. And I think we have to really be intentional moving forward that equity of voice is in this space, especially for a tough conversation that we have to continue to have. And regardless of the decision, will have impact on our kids. So I think we really have to give it justice moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Percy. Anybody else have a quick question or comments?
Katie Nelson has her hand up.
Katie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mike. I have a couple questions, and I guess I'll direct my first couple of them to Chief Hellenbrand, if that's all right.
Yes.
Chief, the SROs serve I think, did you call it like a rotation for 3 years? If they're particularly good at it and this program is revised and is satisfactory to everybody, is it possible that they can serve longer than that?
Definitely. That's one of the things that we want to evaluate. In the past, because of the high demands on the high school spot, we were finding 3 years was probably the max. It's a very demanding position, as you heard from Captain Britt, who's now retired, that is our #1 call address in the city of Middleton every year, and it has been that way for a long time. So 3 years is what we're finding out was kind of the max. And that's part of the evaluation process that we want to look at to see if it should be longer or if we need to look at something different.
My other question to you, Chief, is former Chief Falk said that immigrant families are relieved to find out that they're not turned over or their information isn't given away. I'm going to say to ICE. I don't know who they would be reported to. Is that announced to all the students so that they know ahead of time so that they're not afraid to come to school?
I know in the past it has been announced. I know there's communications from the school district, and I know as a police department, we had a public forum a couple years ago at Cromrie, making that well known to everybody in our community. So it has been shared in the past. Yeah,
I think that would be a good thing to have repeated to a lot of the families who are worried about that. And then last is a comment, and I really don't mean to have this to go to one person. It's just to everybody. I want to thank you for all of the input. I can speak for only myself when I say I have a lot to learn, and I am learning a lot, but I'm going to say something that might sound, I don't know, precocious, or I think we needed this pause. Because if this had just been a little budget item and we just voted and left it, I don't know that we would have heard the voices that we have heard. I don't know that we would be looking at evaluating this program and making it even better. And so I hope that I'm coming with this comment, I'm coming forward with this comment humbly to say that it's not a one or the other. I hope that this uncomfortable moment at least led to a little bit of learning on both sides. And I, for one, I feel a little bit more comfortable about everything that was said tonight. I hope that everybody doesn't feel as tense as we did last meeting.
Thanks. Thank you, Katie. I also want to join Katie and say thank you to everyone who spoke in the first part or 3 minutes or during these 2 presentations. Any other questions or comments?
Mayor, somebody has asked if the meeting's being recorded, and it is, to the city's YouTube channel. So it's live streamed tonight on the city's website, and it is recorded to the city's YouTube channel.
Thank you, Mike. Any other elders have any questions or comments?
Robert Burke has his hand up.
Robert?
Thank you. I guess one of the things I want to say is I think this has been extremely helpful to have multiple sides be able to present here, but presentations are not conversations. And there are difficulties with conversations. Sometimes it's like, well, you can't, there's times when a presentation is good and it gets some of the information on the table that everybody can hear and there's not crosstalk and people talking over each other. So I think that's good. But I would hope that in the future, this turns into real conversations between people from all sides of this issue. Because I know for a fact, look, guess what? I'm an alder person. I get to click a button and say, yeah, I'd like to talk, and I get to talk. I know a lot of you don't have that chance. And I would say, please stay engaged. Please have these conversations, because this is not a conversation. This is an opening statement. The conversations are where a lot of the hard work needs to happen, and where people can really stop and listen to what people have to say, but also ask questions. And I would hope that all of you, if you're still in town, I know some of you are students going elsewhere, maybe, but for those of you who can, stay engaged, stay involved, be part of the conversation, because the only way we move forward is if we have a robust conversation, hearing all sides of this issue. So thank you for tonight, and please continue the efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Anyone else?
Katie Nelson has her hand up.
Katie?
Sorry, just one last thing. To Percy Brown, this is a presumptuous question. Do you get to have an opinion about how this should go?
Percy, you have an option to answer, or, well, anyway, you have an option here. You have an opportunity, actually.
Well, actually, that's just a matter of who has the power. And I think that should be the answer to the question. I don't live in Middleton. I'm an administrator. I've tried to do all that I have been able to do just by way of influence, but by not having, I haven't had power. I've had the ability to influence things that have happened, but this decision ultimately lies in the hands of the taxpayers and the leaders of this community. And you have several students that have helped so much to get the district where it is right now. And to see them come back, it's just amazing, because that's what we want our children to be. So there is something special happening within the district, but it's really up to the power structure to sit down and really figure out what's in the best interest for the students. And I can voice an opinion, but I live in this dual world of having to be an administrator of color in a predominantly white system, which I know I have parameters, but I also have thought processes and ways of thinking, just as a man of color. And like I said earlier, a lot of times, my beliefs and values in terms of what I stand for come into conflict with the system. Because the system has perpetuated inequities, it has perpetuated systemic racism for 400 years. And that's every single institution in this nation. And all I can do is do my best to inform the power structure to start thinking differently, in which you will start to act differently, because I don't have the power. The power lies in the hands of the council, the board, and the taxpayers. So it's really up to those three entities right there and any other stakeholders to really decide what's in the best interest of the community. And regardless of how it shakes out, I have to continue to lead the best way I can and do all that I can to best serve every single student in the district. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Thank you. I have to say, I also am impressed with the high school students staying involved. I know for myself and everybody who I grew up with, we were done with high school and we were done with high school. We weren't engaging in anything that happened at the school. So
there's something really cool about these students who are caring about the classes coming up behind them. So that's really neat. Thanks.
Yeah, I feel good about my daughter's future when I see those students coming back and engaging in the way that they are.
Thank you to both. Anyone else who has their questions or comments?
Mayor, there are several people who have their hands up, but it's not a public hearing at this point. It's the council discussion, correct?
Yep,
Okay,
except that we probably would allow those Heidi and Gabrielle, those two presenters, or any of the other presenter if they want to say anything.
Right. Yeah, Emily has her hand up too.
Emily?
I just wanted to say thank you to all of the presenters. It was very well laid out. And I understand that there was a concern of time. I didn't see it. You were very punctual, very organized. And on the flip side, it was really great to hear from the SROs that have recently served and seeing their insights. Those are the types of things that I've not been briefed on. I've been given an overview, having sat as chair for public safety for 2 years. Also, thank you to the new Madam Chair who has stepped up to lead. I appreciate her leadership. But getting back to the SROs, it was great hearing their different perspectives and seeing that it's not always what was portrayed, which was a white man, white middle-aged man running through the school or walking through the school. But the SROs are diverse in their own ways, and they're bringing their experiences, trying to be there for students. I applaud that, and I hope they keep going if this goes forward. Just thank you for your leaderships.
Thank you, Emily. Anyone else?
Mayor, I think you were about ready to give an allowance to Gabrielle or Heidi to.
Yes, I would.
Comment.
Yes, either of them can speak, yes, or both.
Well, I would like to turn some time over to Elise Armani, who is part of the Middleton High School Alumni Network. She would like to add a few words.
Thank you, Gabrielle. I just wanted to fact check something that Officer Kenneth raised and also offer my own experience for consideration. Officer Kenneth seemed to imply that school resource officers are a primary channel for students reporting sexual assault and rape, when in fact all educators and employees of the public school system are mandated reporters. And statistics show within Wisconsin and all over the country the failures of police consistently to properly address sexual violence. And I can say for myself as somebody who experienced sexual assault while going to school at Middleton, that a school resource officer was probably the least available or accessible resource for me to address that. And I think that that is an experience that's shared with several of my peers. So I appreciate the zeal for addressing sexual assault, and it's certainly another epidemic in our school system, but I really, really have to disagree with, and quite frankly, I'm disappointed in the implication of Officer Kenneth's comments regarding that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Lauren would also just like to bring up the dates for the town hall.
Hi, everyone.
Okay.
I just want to quickly say that this was discussed earlier, but on August 3rd, there will be a town hall at 7 p.m. and more details go out soon. So I would really, really hope that anybody from the school district or community members in this meeting and any common council members, I please urge you to attend this town hall. You all heard from the SROs today during that presentation, and we kept our presentation very concise and fact-based. And so I think this town hall would really just give you all another perspective from some community members and marginalized communities that you were unable to hear during presentations today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And you could forward that information to our city administrator, Mike Davis, and they could put on the city website or notify me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from anyone at this time?
Stephen also has an addition to our presentation.
Hold on, I'm just making sure I'm visible to you guys. Hey, hi everyone. I just wanted to just say when this meeting first started, everyone here in the Middleton Common Council made a point to call racism in this town a public health crisis. And I think that's something that needs to be brought back into this current conversation that we're having about SROs and about the racism that exists within the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District. We've been saying this entire time that there are achievement gaps in the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District. And for some reason, we've been boiled down to just saying, oh, we just want the police out of the schools. The police in the schools are part of the problem. It's a part of the whole system of racism that exists in the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District. So as we're talking about this health crisis, actually, no, excuse what I just said. What I really want to say is I'm one of the few Black people on this chat right now who's just a regular, schmegular citizen of Middleton, Wisconsin. I don't see any other Black voices in here. And I feel like I'm just being gaslit into believing that I am making up these problems. I went through this district. I see the stuff that went down. I saw how Black people were left behind, how they were ridiculed, how they were made fun of. And I want more Black people here. Before any kind of decision is made, we need to talk to the obviously and clearly marginalized Black people in this town, because they aren't here and they aren't speaking. And we can't make decisions for them. We can't. Because if I found out this situation was happening and I wasn't here, I'd be very upset, because I'm a tax-paying voting citizen here. So I want more Black people here for the next one. There has to.
Well, thank you, and you should get involved. I think we do send the information to everyone who asked for it, and if you were to send that information to City Administrator Mike Davis, he will be happy to share. Thank you. Okay, I think anyone else that has a final short comments?
Aiden also had a thought to add.
Yeah, thanks. If I could just have a few minutes, that would be amazing. Am I ready to go?
Well, please keep it short. I think we got to close this meeting now.
Yep, this will be short. So statements from the McPast and police presentation really provide perfect examples of part of the problem, really, right? Charles Folk, you insinuated that because trauma is difficult to quantify, it should not play a significant role in this decision-making process. You said that being greeted by officers every day at school can help minorities get used to police and overcome their trauma. This demonstrates complete lack of understanding. You also said that the SRO program has a 35-year success record. Who is it successful for? Ponder that, please. Kenneth Chung, you said that people need to be less emotional in this important decision. No one has a reason to no one has a responsibility to distance themselves from their experiences, though. No one has a responsibility to numb their emotions. This board and administration needs to stop gaslighting students and recognize that our experiences should inform your decisions.
Okay, thank you, Aiden.
Specifically.
Thank you, Aiden. Really appreciate this. So, okay, I guess I'm going to
Thank you all. I did just want to share that you can reach the alumni network at mcpasdnetwork@gmail.com to get involved in their work. Thank you all so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone. Thank you for, you have enlightened a lot of people. Great job. So I'm going to close this part of the item 2 and 3, and now we're going to move on to item number 4, which is the school resource officer agreement with the school district. Motion to table until the school district board brings back an agreement on a future agenda. Need a motion.
This is Susan. I would make that motion to table the agreement with the school district regarding school resource officers until the school district brings back an agreement at a future agenda.
Need a second.
This is Mark. I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion now? And the assumption here is that the school board will go through the thorough process of evaluation before they bring it back. Okay, any questions or comments from anyone?
This is Emily. I just want to, this might have been talked about. I may have missed it, but with school starting online, does the SROs envision that their work differently, or would they just be on pause for that quarter? Is there any knowledge of that?
I would ask Dana or Chief Allen Brand to respond to that, but my understanding would be that they are there's no school and they're not there. But
okay, I appreciate that, because I know it was just last night being announced, so I don't really expect a full answer. I just want to make sure that I'm on page with you all. So thank you.
Emily, as I understand it, we haven't approved the contract yet. So there is no contract.
I apologize. No, I apologize. It's really late. If
Yes,
it were
it
to
is.
be brought back, if it were to move forward,
yes,
would we really be having them because there's no school? That's more where my conversation was. So, and thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
okay, if anybody wants to add to that, that would be fine. So
This is Robert.
Robert, go ahead.
Thank you. I think it has been an incredibly difficult time these past few months with the pandemic, and
Yes.
the school having to plan for a pandemic, and all of us having to plan for a pandemic. It adds all sorts of levels of difficulty, and you say, well, this happens and it's on top of that. But let's take a step back also and say there's one benefit of this pandemic, and it is opening up some time right now. No matter what happens, the school resource officers will not be interacting with students in the schools for at least the first quarter. So I don't know how quickly everybody can move forward, can have conversations, can get viewpoints from all sides participating in discussion. But I hope that we can take the fact that the school will be closed physically closed. Obviously, schooling will continue on in a virtual place, but I'm hoping we can take this time to really have the discussion and flesh out all of the options so that we can come to a good decision that helps the most people. Thank you.
Well said, Robert. Anyone else? Okay, if there are no more questions or discussion, the motion is for the school resource officer agreement with the school district. The motion is to table until the school district brings back an agreement on a future agenda. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Thank you to everyone, all the alumni, all the school staff, School Superintendent Manogue, and President Annette Ashley, and all of the people involved. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are on to the agreements, item number 1. This is the agreement for tax incremental financing for the Seco Foods expansion project on TID 3, TEP District 3.
This is Mark. I'll move approval as recommended by Finance.
This is Robert. I second that motion.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the TIF agreement with Seco Foods say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Item number 2, very important, agreement for design and engineering work in the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor, Bank and Channel reconstruction. Mark.
This is Mark. I move approval as recommended by Finance, which was to select Cardno as the contractor.
Need a second.
Second, this is Susan.
Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to approve the agreement for design and engineering work in the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor Bank and Channel Stabilized Reconstruction with Cardinal. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 3. This is the agreement for design and engineering work in the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor Trail and Bridge reconstruction.
This is Mark. I'll move approval. It's recommended by Finance to select MSA as the contractor.
This is Susan. I will second.
Okay, any questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, the motion by Mark Sullivan, second by Susan West. This is the agreement for design and engineering work in the Pheasant Branch Creek Corridor for trail and bridge reconstruction going to MSA. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. Item number 4 on the agreement, access easement agreement with Middleton Center. Okay, Larry, you want to say anything briefly or should we just go? Somebody's
No,
going to
I
make
do want to say something briefly. I was in touch with Attorney Brengle on this topic earlier today, and in my request, he has rewritten Title C on page 3, which, as you can see, was not complete in its original form, which basically, and I'll just read the language, obviously. You will see the document has these words. And here's what it now says. On July 14, 1981, the city was granted a pedestrian crossing over the railroad tracks at the location of the closed Aurora Street crossing in Transportation Commission case number 9030-RX-233, and subsequently paid the railroad to install to install pedestrian railroad crossing improvements at that location. That's the only change, and the agreement is unsatisfactory in form.
Okay, so need a motion to approve the access easement agreement with Middleton Center.
This is Robert. I would make that motion.
Okay, thank you.
Second, this is Kathy.
Motion by Robert Burke and the second by Kathy Olson. Any questions or comments?
This is Robert. I do have a question.
Yep.
It was stated in the notes to us that that it appears that the Office of the Commissioner of Railroads is concerned on private ownership, even though that's been what's happened since 1981. And it noted that we're considering the hire of additional experts. I don't know if that's us, the city, doing that, but I guess I want to hear somebody tell me a little bit more detail about.
I can do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Larry.
Before you do, Larry,
yes?
Before you do, somebody on the council has some interference that's coming out on the audio for the meeting, and now it's gone. So thank you, whoever did that.
Okay. In any event,
thank you, Mike.
The issue as arisen was not through an act of the Office of Commissioner of Railroads, but rather the action of the owner of the tracks, which is the Wisconsin River Rail Transit Commission, the successor to the Milwaukee Road that originally owned those tracks. They have taken the position that because the land on both sides of the tracks is now owned by one party, that is Middleton Center, that by operation of law makes this crossing private. Now, I think from talking with Mark Opitz, who's researched this pretty thoroughly, and I believe he's no longer on the call, that Mike's note is slightly wrong in that Mark says that the private ownership on both sides of the tracks was not true at the time of the Transportation Commission hearing in 1981, but it was sold to Ron Gross in maybe 1984 or 1985. It has been that way ever since. But this is very concerning. What they have proposed is that there be a locked gate and fencing, which effectively precludes pedestrian crossing of those tracks, which of course has been going on for decades. The city, not the Railroad Commission, has consulted with an expert, haven't hired him yet, but he has told us that the positions taken so far are inadequate, in that since there is an approved order by the predecessor to the Railroad Commission, their claim that they could do this unilaterally without a Railroad Commission hearing is clearly wrong. So we're working on getting that done sometime in the near future. This easement is essential because it would provide an opportunity for the factual reality that's been in place since the 80s to be true. That is, even though there was never a public easement noted, this easement now grants public access both on the north and the south side of the tracks, and thus, in our view, provides the ability for the Office of Commissioner of Railroads to conclude the status quo is unchanged, and thus it should not have a locked gate. We have noted that if there is a need for additional safety measures at this crossing, certainly the city is not opposed to that, but we don't know what those might be at this point in time. And our expert, if we hire him, may well have suggestions along those lines as well. Thanks.
So what are we proving now? Here we are proving the easement.
The easement that will provide public access easement both on the north and south side of the tracks in the location of the existing railroad crossing.
Okay, great. So now you heard from Larry, so that's what we are voting on this one. Any further questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to access easement agreement with Middleton Center, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Now we are on to award of bid, court, and professional services. This is the award of court to ADS for replacement of HVAC unit at the senior center for $12,505.
This Mark,
I'll move approval. Well, go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead.
I'll move approval. This is Kathy.
Second.
Okay, motion by Kathy and second by Mark. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the award of court to ADS for the replacement of HVAC unit at the senior center, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to the budget, item number 1. Reallocation of 2020 IT capital projects funds.
This is Mark. I'll move approval as recommended by finance.
Ramsey will second. Okay, motion by Mark Sullivan, second by Dan Ramsey. This is the reallocation of 2020 IT capital projects funds. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. We are on to miscellaneous items. Item number 1, request for tax incremental financing assistance for the Impact 7 Housing Development Detrata at 3001 Parliamentary Street for $3,236,922 and developer finance tax incremental finance district number 5.
Ramsey will move approval.
This is Luke. I'll second.
Okay, this is the motion for approving the TIF for the Strata project. Motion by Elder Dan Ramsey and second by Luke. Any questions or comments at this time? Any questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve this TIF request for Strata say aye.
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 Anyone opposed?
Aye.
So anyone opposed? That's Mark. Okay. So 7-1. So item number 2. Well, that's only update. So there's no motion or anything. Update on Metro Transit service, increased cost, potential services changes. Well, do we need to vote on this one or this was for information? Larry, Mike, Mark?
This is important information. Is Mark still on?
Yeah.
Mark
Finance.
Opitz.
No, okay.
Mark Opitz is not on the call.
Okay.
Okay.
So, okay, Abby, what is it?
But this,
I
can't mute myself. I think we don't we need to, because Madison Metro needs to know what service suite level we want by August. Don't we need to have action on this item?
It's not listed as an actionable item.
I believe that Madison.
We'll have to bring it back then.
Yeah, I believe that Madison is planning to proceed with their updated routes in August, and Mark Opitz had indicated that staff and the Ped Bike Transit Commission was in support of the recommendations, and that this would be going to council this evening. So I think that's the direction we're proceeding, unless directed otherwise. This could be potentially put on the next agenda for confirmation of that action if needed.
Okay, so what would we be approving here then? So you think it should be approved? It should be voted on?
I guess I'd defer to Larry on whether or not the action can be taken the way the agenda is worded, but I think that staff was looking for confirmation from the council of the direction that we're planning to go.
So Larry, it says update on Metro Transit service, increased cost, potential service changes.
Yeah, I think that this is a topic which is, there are several interrelated parts of this. There are Metro proposes to charge the city a great deal more due to the pandemic, and the city has considered the possibility of route changes. But I think that that it is appropriate not to take final action on this at this point, because I'm not sure the numbers are final.
Okay. All right. So this,
I think that it would be much better if Madison Metro had firm numbers and there was a firm position on route changes, which I don't think is happened
okay.
yet.
So then it's the update.
Mayor, I'm not sure I agree with Larry on that. I think Madison Metro is planning to move ahead by the end of this month, which would be prior to the next council meeting. So it would be absent our any kind of guidance from the city if you choose not to vote on that.
Mike, this is Mark. Except that finance has given guidance from a budget perspective, which, you know, I think that probably does the sufficient job here, right? So the council might just need an update, but I think city staff has gotten enough guidance from finance as to what the city's position is going to be.
Well, but the motion could be as recommended by Finance Committee.
Okay, Mark, you want to make that motion?
Could it be the motion recommended by Bike Ped that's at the bottom of Mark's note?
I thought that's what Finance approved.
I don't know. I don't remember what Finance
yeah, that's
tonight.
what it was.
That's exactly
okay, to accept Metro Transit service proposal based on the assumption that CARES funding is in place through 2020, while reserving the right to make modifications to the service as more data becomes available.
I think it's through 2021 was the agreement from finance, right? There's CARES money that's contemplated for both 20 and 21, and that's what finance said. You know, that's fine. We'll wait further information from Madison Metro.
Okay. It's no longer on our screen. Somebody moved it.
But based on
right there
on what they had sent us, I think finance was reluctant to proceed, but realized that they didn't have much choice, and sent staff to go back to Madison Metro with our concerns.
So why don't we make the same motion that Bike Ped did?
Because this says an update. It's not for action. And I don't think finance had that same, I'm not sure, but what was the agenda item on finance that we took action on? Did it say update on that as well?
Yeah,
it was the same wording on finance. I think the thought, and perhaps this could have been worded better, was that it would be an update on Madison Metro Transit service, but it did include potential service changes as part of the discussion. And at this point, we weren't looking for formal budget amendment, just direction on those service changes.
Mark, one thing that the Bike Ped wanted, or pedestrian bike wanted, is make sure that the CARES funding was in place as part of this, instead of just accepting this without the CARES funding.
Right.
Correct.
And that's what finance, the numbers that we were given at finance,
right, had CARES,
assume that, right? And so there was no
right
acceptance unless there was CARES money with that. In fact,
I think the pedestrian bike wanted just wanted to be pointed out very specifically that we would need CARES funding to accept these increases. Yeah.
Okay, so Larry, it's still up to you. What do you want to see happen now?
Well, it was quite a few hours ago, and I kind of finance did, but I do recall the discussion and the motion that's at the bottom of the first page of Bill and Mark's report would make sense with the change of the CARES funding through 2021.
Okay, does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. If Dan will make the motion, I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Dan, second by Robert. Any further question or comments? All those in favor of this motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to ordinances. The first reading, final action may be taken upon approval or motion to suspend rules under section 1.07 of Middleton General Ordinances. And that may be a good idea. This is more cleanup work. Number one, an ordinance to amend section 2713(1) relating to the probationary period for police dispatchers.
This is Ramsey. I move to suspend the rules and amend section 27.13.
This is Katie. I'll second.
Okay, motion by Elder Ramsey and second by Elder Nelson. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. This is final. Item number 2, this is the ordinance amend Chapter 16 to correct obsolete or changed criminal code statutory references.
I will again move to suspend the rules and amend Chapter 16.
Katie, I'll second.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to an ordinance to amend Chapter 16 to correct obsolete or change criminal code statutory references, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. We are on to planning and zoning. Item number 1, specific implementation plan, Red Tail Acres Division. So this just somehow fell through the crack and need a motion to approve.
This is Robert. I would make the motion to officially approve the specific implementation plan for the Red Tail Acres subdivision.
Need a second.
Mark.
Ramsey? Okay.
Okay, second by Mark. And this is the official approval of the specific implementation plan for Red Tail Acres subdivision. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We already took round number 2. We are on to now committee appointments. So
I
do you
would
want-
like to make a motion that we defer these so the council can have the full 6 days to consider the applicants that's stated in city ordinances.
Okay, that's fine. Need a second?
I'll second that. It's Katie.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion to defer it to the next meeting, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, did a motion to go into closed session. So
This is
need a
Robert.
motion-
This is Robert. I'll make the motion to go into closed session.
This is
need a
Katie. I'll second.
This is Luke. I'll second that.
Okay, the motion is to go into closed session. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously, and we are in closed session. Mike, you want to take it up that there's only city council and other relevant people in this session?
Yes, I will if you will just give me a minute here.
Okay.